That's what my husband said, but I'm like, no, too many years on the zoning board, I have to know. Good evening. Looks like we have a lot of people here this evening, and we welcome you all to the meeting. This is our monthly meeting of the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals, which is also known as the BZA. I am Cecilia Espinoza, the chair of the board. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. Serving with me are Vice Chair Monica Craven, who's unable to be with us this evening, Judy Freshman, Charles Smith, and Terry Russell. Also present are the professional staff, including our zoning administrator, Norma Cozart, the deputy zoning administrator, Andrew Noxon, who serves as the secretary to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Clifton Hogan is also with us in the front row, who's the assistant to the zoning administrator, and Cheryl Williams, our zoning technician. Again, we thank you all for being here and extend a warm welcome. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you turn off or place in silent mode your cell phones and other electronic devices. On the front table, you will find copies of the staff report for each case scheduled to come before us this evening. I recommend that if you have not yet seen the report for your case or one that you might be interested in tonight, get a copy of the report and review it before the case is heard. In addition, if you wish to speak this evening, please fill out a speaker form. They're on this table to my right, your left, and you can bring those up to the front of the office, to Ms. Williams over here, our zoning technician. The Board of Zoning Appeals powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests with the county board. The board does have the authority to do 3 things. We can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1- and 2-family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. We can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance, and we can decide appeals of the decisions of the zoning administrator. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary in the public interest, including limiting the duration of the use permit. In order to approve a use permit, the law requires that the board find that the proposal meet the conditions and that the use permit will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. To do this, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of development with the surrounding neighborhood because the structure's overall footprint, size, and placement are similar to the structures on the properties surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees or foliage. When granting variances, the board must determine that the strict application of the ordinance would produce undue hardship, that the hardship is not generally shared by other properties in the same zoning district, and that the authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property, and that the character of the district will not be changed by granting the variance. A Virginia Supreme Court ruling requires that a variance cannot be granted unless the effect of the zoning ordinance, as applied to the piece of property under consideration, would, in the absence of a variance, interfere with all reasonable beneficial uses of the property, taken as a whole. This evening, the cases will be called and a brief staff report and recommendation will be given. Following that, board members will ask any questions of the staff they may have. Next, applicants or their representatives will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. If they choose to make a comment, they must come forward to the podium so that their comments can be recorded for the record. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip, which is available on the table in front of the room. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speakers, but does not permit and will not condone any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. We have deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 5 minutes for applicants for use permits and variances. For use permits and variances, we have deemed that 3 minutes for representatives of organizations and 2 minutes for individuals is sufficient. Especially given the large number of people that we have here tonight, we'll be asking Ms. Williams to keep track of that time, and it'll be on the podium as you're speaking. That time will count down. After the board has gathered all information they need and discussed the case, it will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. As I said, Ms. Craven's not here this evening, so if a matter is decided by a tie, that is deemed that the application will not be granted because there's not a majority. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Again, thank you for being here. Mr. Noxon, please call the first case.
Thank you and good evening. Our first case tonight is V-10678-12-UP-2. And this is a use permit request by Robert and Kathy Smith. The permit is setback of 8.6 feet to the eave, 11.2 feet to the wall, and 10.6 feet to the steps from the North Culpeper Street right-of-way instead of 25 feet is required. Then also a setback of 3.7 feet to the eave and 5.7 feet to the wall from the left side property line instead of 8 feet is required. It's for the construction of a new 2-story detached single-family home with a garage, as well as a covered front stoop with steps, a basement, and a rear deck with steps. This is in the R6 zoning district, a premises known as 1941 North Culpeper Street.
Thank you. And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution approving the use permit with an eave dimension of 10 feet from the North Culpeper Street right-of-way and an eve dimension of 5 feet from the left side property line with conditions. And the alternative, the board has also been given an alternative resolution that would grant the application as it was advertised. Any questions of Mr. Noxon? Seeing none, are either Robert and or Kathy Smith present? Why don't you come forward and you can speak on behalf of your application.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for hearing my case tonight. My name is Kathy Smith, and this is my builder, Aubrey Skinner, and we're here to seek approval for the use permit and to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. And I noticed from the staff report that you had previously received a variance, and why was that not acted on?
We were actually doing a very special project at the time. I don't know if you remember, it was about 2 years ago we were here, and it was for a shipping container home. And when we received the use permit in July, we also had a number of other things that was going on that we were doing with the county with the easements and the conveyance and of the property lines. And during that time, we were working with our builder who the shipping container builder is in Tennessee, and our architect was in St. Louis. And during this time, we actually been working on the project at that point for about 3 years. And by the time we got all of the approvals and the conveyance, the builder changed their delivery method. They were initially going to build out the shipping containers, do the shipping containers, finish it modularly, come on site, put them together, and it be a whole package deal. Probably that our use permit expired July of 2013. April 2013 is when they told us that they don't do that anymore. And that basically they were going to find us a local contractor and everything was going to be on budget and everything was going to be fine. They tried to do that, and unfortunately, they got bids back, and it was $200,000 over the budget.
Wow.
So that being said, we were scrambling to find another builder that would do it, and the use permit expired July 10th, and I actually had a baby on July 8th. So there was a lot of different things going on at the time, and we weren't able to, get the building permit in, find a builder for the shipping containers. So after we had the baby, I contacted Aubrey Skinner from Ancora Homes, because he built a home down the street from us, and we thought that he did a really nice job with it. And we approached him, and he said that he'd be able to build us a house, not being shipping containers, and that's what you see in front of you now.
Okay, can either of you respond to the zoning administrator's recommendation that your request be modified, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, good evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity here tonight. And I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time? Did I talk to Drew?
Yes. Are you aware of their alternative?
About the eaves,
Yes.
bringing the eaves back? Yes,
That
and
for
that's
us?
something. Yeah, that's something that the design of the home is such that obviously the eaves do play an important role in the overall appearance of the home. And I know that I know Rob and Kathy are very excited about the design of the home, and hoping that the board will grant approval as it's designed. But if that doesn't happen and we need to pull those back to meet the criteria, we can certainly do that. The thing that I would add with that is, this design versus the previous design, it's a much, overall height is much lower on this particular design versus the previous one. It had like a parapet type wall that was up above and it had like a rooftop deck. So it stuck up much higher than this house does. So there's a much lower roof line, which I think will make the house seem smaller in the neighborhood and fit in much more nicely. And the overhangs, although on paper that shows them to be, away from the home like 2 feet, when you look at them, they're very thin roof lines. They don't carry a lot of trim and ornate trim. They're very thin. So visually, they're not going to be as obstructive as you would think. So we're hoping that the board will support it and as it is. But we're willing to work with the board. But I know Rob is pretty emotional about keeping the overhang. So hopefully we can keep them. But we'll do what we need to try to get it done. I know they're very excited about it. It's been a long road for them. Mm-hmm. I've worked with them for several months now to try to get it done for them. They have small children. They're looking to try to get this thing done. Hopefully, so they can get into the next school year, and
Great.
So.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions?
You also have some information about the eaves and the distance from the.
That's
right
different
away.
from what's in the packet?
Yes.
Okay, if you would give it to Mr. Russell here, and then we can all look at it. You have copies for all of us?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. If you just give it to him, we'll pass it down. We can look at that. And why don't we have you have a seat?
Okay.
I believe we have Edward Garnett or Glenn Garnett.
Hello.
Hi. And you're speaking in opposition to this building?
Yes. My parents I'm the son. My dad is sitting right there. That's actually his house on that picture. One of our main concerns is water. I know the eave is on the plans that we received last Saturday is 3 feet 7 inches away from the property line. Well, from the property line to their carport is probably 12 feet. So my main thing is water issues. I had someone look at these plans briefly. They did say they did see I think they called it a storm management system or something. They had some questions about that. They said they thought they needed another one on my dad's side of the property to catch that downspout. Right now, all I like to do is kind of postpone this so I can get someone to look at all this to make sure that my dad won't have any water problems in the future, because once this house is up, there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you. And you are at 1937 North Culpeper Street, or your father is?
Yes.
Okay, just putting that into the record. Thank you so much. Did anybody have any questions? If not, Ms. Smith or Mr. Skinner, can you come back up and maybe address the question with regard to that? As I think, Mr. Skinner, you'd probably be in the best position.
Yes, I appreciate that concern, and you know, given the proximity of the home, I can certainly appreciate it. You know, much like the previous home I built down the street, it too was very close to the property line. We had similar concerns with the neighboring homes. The roof system has a planter drainage system on it. I'm sure you guys are well aware of how that works. All of the roof water runs off into the gutter system and is captured by the planter filtration box. It has landscaping in it. The water goes in it. It filtrates down, removing any of the harmful impurities in the water before it is discharged across the property at a normal rate. So any water that hits that roof is very similar to the same way it would if it was hitting a vacant lot. And probably after we're done building the house, it would probably be an improvement upon hitting a vacant lot. So, you know, there's a lot of care in the design and how those systems work with Arlington. I learned it all too well on the last go around. So I'm pretty confident that it will eliminate any issues, any concerns with water runoff, anything that hits the roof.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skinner. Ms. Smith, I just had one further question. I noticed in the packet that you had put an inquiry into the neighborhood association. Did you hear back from them?
I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Did get a neighbor that approved.
And you received no other signatures from anyone in the neighborhood?
I did actually receive a signature from the neighbor across the street in support.
Okay, and I don't believe you've submitted that to the packet.
I just got this.
Why don't you go ahead and hand that in, and we can at least put it in with the packet. Okay. You can have a seat. I believe we're at a place of deliberation.
Madam Chair, I would just say that to the speaker who was concerned about the water runoff, what the designer just described is a more efficient system than had existed in the past, and the rules for water runoff from buildings now are tighter than they ever have been. And so with this kind of building, for lack of a better expression, high-tech, it's going to utilize the most energy conserving methodology that's really available. So I am confident that their description of the water runoff is going to solve your problems, much less create any greater problems. It actually will be better than it is right now.
Mr. Garnett, thank you. Yes, that's the issue that we're addressing, is whether they can get a use permit to come closer than that setback. You've had your say on that, and now it's the board's. It's to the board to deliberate whether we're going to grant that or not. And as the factors that I read at the beginning are what the board is considering in making our decision. In addition, it's important for us as a board to think about the nature of the lot as described in the application and the description there in terms of it being a substandard lot, and what other ways that they could design the house or put it onto this property. And one of the difficulties is this is a very small lot. I will say I think this is a better design towards those issues than what there was with the container home that had been approved previously as well. If there's no further discussion, I am prepared to take a motion.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution granting use permit V-10678-12-UP2 with the revised setbacks of 10 feet to the eve from the North Culpeper Street right-of-way and 5 feet to the eve from the left side property line, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution as recommended by the zoning administrator. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. So, sorry we're modifying it, but we are granting the variance. Good luck. So, Mr. Garnett, we didn't give them all of what they wanted. We did move those setbacks back a little bit. Okay? Thanks.
All right, our next case, this is a reapplication. This is V-10847-13-UP-2. This is a use permit request by Lauren and Carolyn Gilbert to permit a setback at 13.8 feet to the eave and 14.8 feet to the wall of a new two-story home, also 14.9 feet to the porch from the North Kensington Street right-of-way instead of 25 feet as required, and this is for a new two-story detached single-family home with a rear deck with steps and a new covered front porch with steps. This is in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 415 North Kensington Street.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution approving the subject use permit with conditions. Any questions of staff? If seeing none, are Lauren or Carolyn Gilbert present?
It's good to be back. Well, okay, it's not good to be back, but I'm here. So what happened was we were building the house, and we had framed up the addition portion on the back side of the house, and we started to demo the drywall inside the house to put the second story. And what we found was extensive termite damage to the point that I couldn't allow them to do anything but reframe the existing walls. We were already moving the windows and doors, and we were raising the whole level up an additional foot. So by the time we did all that work and then tried to piece together the wood that was already there, it made no sense but to just do it right the first time. I was in a rush to get here. I actually went dumpster diving to get you a piece of the wood that we had demoed, but I left it in the back of the truck. Literally brittle, like to your fingers. It was so bad. We had done a termite inspection, and of course, they only said, there's a little bit by your front door, and they treated for that, but, they can't see inside the walls, and it was pretty rough. So, I'm not apologizing for what I did, because it was really the only option that I could do to make that second story even structurally sound.
But having come before us before, you didn't think about the fact that your structure was non-conforming and...
I didn't think about it at all, actually, because I'd be like, well, we're going to go according to the plans. We have to replace that wood. It didn't register in my mind that wood was actually the factor that needed to be considered.
And the reason I raise this is not only for yourself, Mr. Gilbert, but also for everyone else in the audience who might who might obtain a variance or waiver, you have to follow what is granted. And if you go outside of that, if you're doing anything that you can't do by right, or that you haven't pulled a building permit for, it could trigger other problems. So Mr. Gilbert's house was situated originally as a non-conforming structure outside of the setbacks. He was allowed to build, and we gave him the use permit to build on the back of that house, and he found that the front of his house was not structurally sound. In then tearing that down to the baseboards, he no longer he didn't have a non-conforming structure anymore. He has a new building. As a result of that, since the new building doesn't meet the setbacks, he needed to come back here to us. So that's why Mr. Gilbert is here tonight. And just to let you know, if something like that happens to you, don't just go build. Stop the process, come back and talk to Drew and the building department, because they will tell you whether you would need to come back and get another permit. Any additional thoughts or questions?
I have a question for the applicant. So your builder tore the house down and built. That wouldn't have reflected the plans that were approved for construction by Inspection Services Division, would it?
Right. So that wasn't the idea at all. It was to tear those basically use those 3 exterior walls. Mm-hmm. We were gonna try to keep those, but it was proposed to me after going to see him. He said, "Hey, you got to see this."
Pardon me, but what we saw in the previous one is framing that has been done
right
since then. So Inspection Services Division allowed you to proceed with new building plans.
Well, I hadn't had that framing permit, or I hadn't had that framing inspection done yet.
I see.
It would have been, another week.
Okay.
To been completely done. I've resubmitted the plans as we had done now. So Inspection Services has approved those. Pending the variance, then I'll get zoning approval and we can start.
Okay, that'd help. Thank you.
Okay, the only thing else I'd like to point out, Mr. Noxon, on page 2 of the report, you have the word in previous BZA actions, you had granted a setback of a setback. I don't know that we need the second setback.
Where is that?
Under previous BZA actions, granted a setback
I see.
of,
A setback of, okay,
we can take out of a setback.
thank you.
Okay. If there's no further questions, you can have a seat, Mr. Gilbert. I don't believe we have any other speakers on this matter. Am I mistaken? I have so many slips, so that I'm going to ask that just in case I miss anybody, but.
Madam Chair, I forgot to ask the applicant, what efforts did you, given this new building, what efforts did you make to contact the neighbors and say, hey, by the way, I know you had some support in the past. We had a problem, and that addition that we were going to do is now turned into a new home.
And honestly, I didn't reach out to the neighbors again this time because I probably should have, but they had already approved this building plan. The exterior, the interior is going to look exactly the same as the previous one that was approved. So I didn't think it was necessary to go and approach them about, I could have, maybe I should have, but I didn't think it was going to be necessary since it was going to be the same exact structure for them visibly with the same setbacks that had previously been approved.
So you're not changing the exterior look of the home at all?
No.
So you're just replacing what was there?
Just had to replace those walls right there, yeah.
Some people would have used that as an opportunity to change things, and
Well, there's one thing, I did extend the deck on the plat 3 more feet, but I didn't.
and is that by right, Mr. Noxon?
No, it's listed in the application.
Okay.
It's further back than the rest of the building.
Instead of 7 feet, it's 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I had 7 feet down there in the first place. That's pretty narrow for a deck.
Okay. I think we just wanted to make sure we understood exactly what was being done.
Sure.
New. Okay, any further questions? Okay, this time I think you can sit down. No more questions? Is there a motion?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Russell?
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the resolution granting use permit B108471 UP2, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Russell, seconded by Ms. Freshman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. The motion carries. Good luck, Mr. Gilbert. Hope you don't run into any other problems.
All right. Our next case tonight is V-10869-13-VA-1. This is carryover and revised variance request by Marisa Teresa DeSaba to permit a setback of 6 feet to a new parking lot from the left side property line instead of 10 feet as required, and also a second option to permit tandem parking spaces on a property with the use other than a 1 or 2 family or townhouse dwelling. This is for a new parking lot for a new child care center. This is in the R5 zoning district on a premises known as 821 23rd Street South.
Okay, and the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the proposal for tandem parking spaces, which is noted in our report as option 2, but approving the variance for 6-foot left side yard setback, option 1, with conditions. And an alternative resolution is part of our packet, should the BZA wish to grant option 2 with the tandem parking layout. This is a matter which was carried over from an earlier Board of Zoning Appeals, so we have heard some testimony on it previously. The packet does indicate that there are signatures from several individuals in the neighborhood, and we also have several speakers tonight, I think all of whom are here to speak against the matter. Any questions of the zoning administrator or staff? Okay, seeing none, is Ms. Sarah Mariska or Maria Teresa DeSaba here? Ms. Mariska, you are at 2200 Clarendon Boulevard, number 1300. Is that correct? And you are the agent acting on behalf of Ms. DeSaba.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Mariska, an attorney with the law firm of Walsh Colici, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the MTB Early Enrichment Center. Maria Teresa is also here with us, as well as Tony Saba, as well as Antoinette Aguilar from Walter L. Phillips, and Rebecca Brown from Butts Wilburn Architects. So we have plenty of people here if you do have questions about our proposal or some of our thought process since December. When we were last here in December, there was significant discussion about the applicant's applications, and we greatly appreciate the deferral that allowed us to thoughtfully review our plans, explore alternative design options, and prepare supplemental information. I have distributed some packets that I'm hoping provide some information that maybe it's hard to read in the staff reports and gives a little bit more information about our requests. I want to start with option 1, which is consistent with what we presented in December. I just want to go through very quickly why we think this is a good option. It's been very thoughtfully designed to be compatible with the neighborhood, which is something that we heard at the last hearing was a concern. It's compatible in terms of the residential structure's appearance, building materials, and design. The setbacks are consistent with the setbacks of any other residential structure that could be built in the neighborhood. And then in turning to the parking, we took great care to use permeable pavers, and in fact, the third sheet in your package is an image of permeable pavers and the look and feel that would have on the property, and we think it is dissimilar from a standard asphalt parking lot. It would be more residential in character, and certainly is a higher quality material than you might otherwise see in a parking area. We also, as I hope you note in the street elevation, have proposed some substantial screening, both a mix of vegetation types and sizes in front of that parking area, so we really are screening from view that parking area. The only variance request we are requesting with option 1 is to modify an internal setback. 10 feet is required from parking to a property line, and we're proposing that it be 6 feet. And that's from property line that shares the line with our other child care facility. It's not drastically impacting any adjacent properties in the area. I also want to note, in response to some of the comments that we heard at the last hearing, we have added some screening in the rear. There was some comments about making sure that things were screened on all sides, and we did increase the landscaping in the rear to be sensitive to that concern. Turning now to option 2, we did look at some alternatives, and this is what we were able to put forward. Based on our traffic patterns and trip generation and the staff comings and goings, we feel that tandem spaces are a very viable option for us. This does allow us to slightly reduce the area of that parking. Our coverage then is reduced as well. And it means that the parking is actually, the 10 feet required from the internal property line is met. The variance is with respect to the tandem parking spaces as opposed to standard parking spaces. The structure in option 1 and option 2 is the same. It's residential in character, and I think that street elevation in option 2 shows how that the entry would be to the side, which is in keeping with kind of a residential driveway. And we do have enhanced screening in that option 2 as well. And then clustering the parking together allows us to beef up that screening in that area so that really the parking is not visible. Permeable pavers, again, are used in that option 2. Also included in your packet is some pictures that we've taken from the surrounding area. The immediate area, as I mentioned, includes churches, it includes childcares, it includes homes with large parking areas, homes with large driveways. In a word, this neighborhood's eclectic, such that I think the proposed pavers with the screening would fit in with the character of the neighborhood. We did look at some other design options. We had hoped that we would have some other alternatives tonight, but quite simply, they did not maintain that residential character that we were striving for. For instance, one of the options that we looked at would have put the building on the eastern side of the property, put parking in between the two structures, and it would have resulted in a very odd-looking building, to be quite candid. It would not, I think, in our opinion, have been in keeping with the size and shape and structures in the surrounding vicinity, and I think the proposal you have in front of you tonight looks much more similar to the houses in the area. We do have the support of staff for option 1, and we also have signatures from 51 Arlington residents. There are signatures in your packet that I included. Some of them are repeats from before, and many of those are new, but it's a total of 51 Arlington residents on those signature sheets. We also have a letter in support from the Civic Association who we met with on this application. And then finally, we also have the support of Arlington Transportation Partners that we've met with. In conclusion, I think this is a critical need. It's compatible with the neighborhood in a convenient location. We respectfully request your approval.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Okay. Were there any questions of the applicant's representative?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Russell.
I have a question. You just mentioned the support from the neighborhood. I did see that. Is there a new neighborhood support letter since the package was delivered to us?
There is simply the letter that's in the staff report on behalf of Aurora Highlands. It's towards the back of the package, and they reviewed option 1. They have not reviewed the new one. They reviewed option 1, but again, that's carried forward from the previous application.
But, and I hate not to be able to quote because I can't find it for one thing. Didn't they say they preferred that there not be parking on site? I kind of read it as if it said, we support daycare use, childcare use, but we don't support parking on site.
When we met with them, and I've talked to the president of the Civic Association several times, they recognize that the zoning ordinance requires parking. So their preference, yes, is that there be no parking, but they also were in recognition of the fact that the zoning ordinance requires it. They understood that that was part and parcel of the application.
Yes. There had been previous interpretations or whatever for others that allowed off-site parking, which might be resolved by an amendment to the zoning ordinance.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we have a large number of speakers. I believe they're all speaking against. I'm going to go through them in order. I'll read the first person and the second person if they can get behind. I'm actually going to go 3 deep, and then we'll do the next 3. So Michael Sue, Henry Howard, Cynthia Kellums. So if Michael Sue can come forward. And again, you will have, is it 2 minutes? 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Michael Sue. I'm here to represent myself as well as my parents who could not be here because they're out of the country. I've been a longtime resident of Arlington County, and particularly that neighborhood. I've lived there since I was 2 years old, and only when I left for the Marine Corps did I actually leave that neighborhood. My parents have owned a house across the street since 1979, and they have lived in that neighborhood since 1970. My dad has also owned a business just down the street on 23rd Street, which he sold in 1985. So my parents own 2 properties, one directly across the street, kind of catty-corner on Ives Street, which would be primarily impacted by the parking lot, as well as the property immediately behind this property on 22nd Street. It's a rental property that he owns that he plans to downsize into. And I own a property on 21st Street on the 800 block. I would say that that block is primarily residential. That entire block that the building is on is residential and is not set up for commercial property. Lastly, that street, 23rd Street, if you look at it, it's a 2-lane street, but it is heavily trafficked by buses, fire trucks, and other heavy equipment vehicles. Up the street is the BZA Daycare Center, which has a similar setup in terms of parking in that it's a very narrow one kind of turn-in parking. Cars have to back out into the street to get in and out of that property, and it causes a lot of traffic incidents. In particular, my parents, their backyard is across the street from the BZA Daycare, and they've had 2 accidents come through their yard, as well as a canoe that came through their yard one time. So I'm intimately aware of how bad the traffic is there. Okay. Not to mention that the corners have speed humps on them too. If you know what those are, they cause a tremendous amount of traffic.
Okay.
So.
And just to clarify, you put the address down your address down as 2300 South Ives Street, and that's where you...
Parents' address.
That's your parents' address that you described. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Henry Howard, followed by Cynthia Kellums, followed by Amelia Moniz.
Yes, I own the rental property.
Let me actually get on the record first your address, and I'll try and do this for everybody.
I
so
own the property.
Your Henry address at 815 23rd Street?
I own that property. I do not live there. I own that property.
Okay.
Which is directly to the east of the subject property.
Okay, and where do you reside?
1207 26th Street South.
Okay, thank you.
First, I'd like to say the petition they're talking about said they had 51 Arlington residents. I only counted 44 people on the petition, 10 of which list their Alexandria addresses. But that being said, I do have parking. I do have a 2-unit building directly to the east. I have a parking lot in the back of my residence. I do not think this parking lot fits this neighborhood at all. And as far as a hardship to grant this, I do not believe that you could build a new structure that would cause you to have a hardship. It seems like the new building is causing their hardship for having that parking lot there. That doesn't seem to be a fair way to do things, that you can create a hardship for yourself in order to get a variance. That's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next speaker is Cynthia Kellum. Listed her address as 815 23rd Street South.
Correct.
Go ahead.
First of all, as a volunteer who runs a county program, I thank all of you for your service and serving in this important capacity. I know how not fun or easy that can be at times. Putting a 10-space parking lot in the front yard of what until now has been a residential property on a residential street goes against the spirit and the character of the neighborhood. You talked earlier about landforms. This would definitely affect the landform in that yard. If we look at the photo again, there's an old growth tree in the front yard. The yard is raised. Putting a parking lot there would cause all of that to be taken out. As far as compatible, I heard an earlier speaker talk about how compatible this is with the neighborhood. I personally don't see anything compatible about this with the neighborhood. There's nothing compatible about putting a large parking lot in the front yard of a house. No matter whether it looks like a house or not, it's a residential neighborhood. Screening won't help people who live on the second floor of the building next door. I know that because I look out those windows. In terms of enhanced screening, unless you're planting full growth 8-foot or 10-foot shrubs, which most people don't do, I don't think enhanced screening is going to make a difference in the short term. And as far as eclectic, the neighborhood being eclectic, yeah, it's eclectic, but it's a residential neighborhood. This is not a place for commercial property. This variance sets a precedent that I think goes against the character and the spirit of the residential neighborhood, and we ask that you decline this request. Also, I'm under the understanding that you received a letter from a neighborhood resident, Ashley Douglas, yesterday, and I support everything she's written in there in full spirit of it, and she stated things more articulately than I can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, we have Ms. Douglas's letters. For the record, we have Ms. Douglas's letter and an email from Cindy Lips, as well as the testimony that's being heard this evening. And our next speaker is Amalia Moniz, followed by Henry Howard, followed by, is that the same person?
Henry Howard twice?
Oh, yeah, wait, I think those might be in the use permit, so.
Probably, yeah.
You guys were good and put it in twice, and if we get to the use permit, we'll get to those. Okay, so, sorry, Amalia Moniz, followed by Joshua Millsap? Or that's actually someone speaking for. I'm sorry,
Me and my husband occupy the 814 South 22nd Street. We oppose both the use permit and the variance requested by Mrs. Maria Teresa de Seba at 821 South 23rd Street. Except her business at 825 23rd Street, the whole area from South Hayes all the way down to 18th Street where the library is, the area is strictly residential. Her request is to ignore the R5 zoning and convert it to a commercial establishment. We do not want commercial business in an established residential neighborhood. It will create extra noise and traffic. I live over there for 15 years, and I'm willing to live over there for the rest of my life. I want the house to stay residential. I don't want the yard turning into a parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Rob Douglas, 615 25th Street South.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I apologize. I was out in the hall with my son going to the potty, so I'm sorry if I missed a few of the comments. But I just don't see how this new structure with such a large parking lot is going to add any value to the neighborhood. We've already got a number of daycares there, and it appears that there's plenty of commercial space in commercial locations very nearby that is unoccupied, vacant, and while we're trying to jam a daycare center into a residential block, I'm having trouble with it. So I'd like to urge you guys to deny the request for the variance and the special use.
Okay. I don't know if your wife's now with your child, or I don't know if it is the wife. Ashley Douglas, 615 25th Street South.
Hi, Ashley Douglas, 615 25th. And as you can see, as the mother of two small children, I understand the critical importance of childcare. Although I'm here tonight to oppose the setbacks and also the use, if we get to it, to construct a commercial parking lot in the middle of an entirely zoned R5 neighborhood. It would substantially change the character of this block. And I just want to point out, as I think Mr. Russell noted earlier, that the Civic Association letter was not an unqualified letter of support and specifically opposed the parking should it turn into a daycare center. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark Hutto. (623 19th Street South).
That
is correct, and we have a designated speaker, and I agree with everything that they have said.
Okay.
And I believe that this would be out of the character for the street and the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all of the speaker slips I have speaking opposed. I do have 3 speaker slips having gone through these that are for Tony Saba. That's the applicant. Okay, do you need to speak any more beyond your representative or? Okay, so, and then Joshua Millsap. Okay, why don't we hear from Mr. Millsap first, since he's a person from the neighborhood, and then I'm sorry, Mr. Saba, I didn't realize you were here when you had your agent here. I didn't know that you were also present.
All right. I live just a few blocks away at 1207 20th Street South. I've had 3 children go through the daycare. It's obviously, daycare is an incredible need for our community, and I think one of the things that's so great about Maria Teresa de Sabas is it does fit in with the community. If you look in that neighborhood, and I've lived in that neighborhood now a long time, it marries directly into it. If you look at the plans that they've put forward, it's going to mesh beautifully. If you look at some of the structures that are on that street, it represents a significant improvement in the look and feel in some cases, and it matches the overall character of the neighborhood. It is, I think, when you go and you drop your children off, you want to drop them off in a place that looks like a home, not a commercial structure, and it marries in nicely. The rest of that neighborhood, I think it's been mentioned, there are many other daycares, there are many other businesses that are on that street. 23rd Street is the main street of our part of South Arlington there, and this plan fits in perfectly with the way that the rest of that neighborhood's been put together.
Let me ask you this. If a daycare was going on your block with parking in the front of the house, would you feel the same way? I mean, and I guess for me, the question becomes, parking is a very different issue than the structure of the daycare itself. That's not even at issue in this decision.
Change is always an issue. So we took over, when we moved in, we moved into a place that was essentially also much like the structure next door to the daycare, very run down. And we had a lot of pushback from our neighbors with regard to the construction project that we undertook. I think that now if you were to go around and ask those same neighbors, are they happy with what they got? I think they would almost to a person say, yeah, we're exceptionally glad with the product of it. We had to live through the process, but now what you've built fits the overall character of the neighborhood, and it looks great. For us, a structure of the type and nature of what they're putting forward fits perfectly.
Okay, do you understand it's not the structure that we're talking about, it's the parking?
100%. That's, I guess when I say structure, I'm talking about it's the full thing. When you look at the overall, the totality of what's being put forward, if you look at those plans, they've got some very nice drawings that have been put forward. It looks beautiful. It fits in with the character of that neighborhood. I've lived there a long time.
Thank you. Also speaking for is Del Sanders, 936 South 16th Street South. Is Mr. Sanders here?
I am here. The name is Saunders. I have been, we have been in our home in the neighborhood for 44 years, so we have watched a lot of progress in everything. We've been privileged to live next door to Maria Teresa de Saba for many of those years. We have watched her serve the neighborhood with her amazing ability to provide exceptional daycare services, and the families that have been affected by this have been very much appreciative, and it's hard to understand all that they express. She is one of the best. We have been privileged to know her, and it has not impacted us negatively to live next door during all these years while this has gone on. It's been more cars, but it's been for a worthwhile need. What could better serve our families than to really have dependable care? We have appreciated her character, her work. we have watched the neighborhood. To me, this would fit in great in the neighborhood because, yes, there is parking. I was at the Arlington County meeting where we stood up in support of that parking. I was surprised to hear there was a negative comment in that letter from Arlington County. We see this as a great improvement in the overall neighborhood and want to stand and say so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Okay, at this time we will call forward. As I said, that's the end of the speaker slips I have on this matter, but we have the applicant, Tony Saba, co-applicant.
As the applicant, do I have a little bit more time? The 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just, because I'm forgetful, I'm going to just read what I wrote. So good evening and thank you very much. My name is Tony Saba again. I'm the son of the applicant. I just have a few follow-up comments. I can understand the apprehension of the commercial property issue that some people have brought up, but I would like to point out that although we will be regarded as a commercial property, we are not in the same category as a convenience store, a restaurant, a dry cleaning service, or many other commercial entities. First, the design of the center is made to look like a house. It blends with the neighborhood. Second, we will not have late night or evening hours like so many other businesses. We operate during school hours, taking into account extended day schedules Monday through Friday. And third, we are trying to provide a feeling of a home away from home, and we feel that this can be accomplished by having a daycare in a neighborhood rather than a cold concrete feel of a property in a commercial district. Young infants and preschool children, in our opinion, are much better served when they are part of a warm community, and since they are already residents of the neighborhood and similar neighborhoods in the Arlington area and the surrounding areas, we feel they deserve a place with the same feel of a neighborhood, much like school-age children in the neighborhood elementary schools like Oak Ridge. We feel the youngest children should also have the privilege of attending a neighborhood daycare center. We didn't plan on having a second daycare next to the current one, but when the owner of the property approached us for selling his house, we thought this would be a perfect solution to have a space for growing families, allowing siblings the ability to attend within close proximity rather than two families having to go to two different centers and make two different trips. This would allow us that flexibility to reserve sibling spaces because families are growing. We have, I think, 5 or 6 families that have 2 children already enrolled, and we have no room. We don't have any room for any more siblings, so we're kind of like nervous what's going to happen to the new babies. In terms of the parking lot look, the neighborhood appearance, we do live in a neighborhood that's not a typical cookie-cutter suburban neighborhood, and that's what makes it particularly charming. We, too, are longtime residents since the 70s with a little gap in the 80s. I mean, I've seen the 2 subways being built. I remember the AT&T building in Pentagon City before the mall was there. I used to play in that forest. It used to be a beautiful forest. We would also like to point out that the parking is required by the zoning office. So that's why we have that parking, because it is required. It's not because of our choice. I've been in contact with the Arlington Transportation Partners, and they have been extremely helpful. We have different programs set up so that staff can take advantage of the pre-tax commuter program. They were nice enough to give us a beautiful display with bike routes. We have a place in their website with a link on our website. Our link is actually titled, "You Don't Need a Car to Get Here," and it's a live, it's live. If you go in, it'll tell you exactly how to get there using different transportations: subway, bus, bicycle, walking trails. And a lot of new families that come for a tour of our center are very appreciative of that information because they weren't aware that they actually don't need a car. And I guess in closing, and they've been very supportive, and they have a wonderful letter that they wrote for us, and we plan to continue working with them to promote that car-free diet, which is something that's very important, I think, in Arlington. I'd just like to, in closing, to ask for the approval of this application that will allow us to provide a valuable service with more flexibility to have spaces available for siblings of growing families in a location we feel works best to serve the needs of the youngest members of our community. And we can't wait until these children become young adults and have fun memories of their preschool and school and the preschool years. and point out their first school in the neighborhood where they grew up, much like we all do with our first elementary school. And I would also like to point out that the neighbor right next door to the current center also is very supportive, and he wrote a very nice letter for us. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? I guess I do have one question of staff. Both of the resolutions that you provided to the board presume approval of a parking, which both require variance. Is there a reason there's not a motion in the packet to deny them if we don't find the conditions for variance exist?
It usually just goes by a recommendation, but if you wish to deny, we just add that to the minutes.
Okay. Normally you have all the options, and so I just noticed it's not in the packet. It's open to the board for discussion.
I have one question. I have one question of staff. This may have come up the last time, and I'm brain dead, but I understand that parking is required where it was not required on site for the first facility. Is there a reason why it has to be in the front?
There's really nowhere else to put it on the lot. You need a drive aisle that's a two-way drive aisle to access the parking, and that has to be 23 feet wide. Even if you did a one-way drive aisle on one side then another on the other side, you have even greater variances possibly for coverage as well as setbacks from the property lines, because you'd be right up against the property lines. Okay. So really it wasn't a viable option for them to do that.
Well, I just think that's unfortunate, because I am not persuaded that a parking lot for 10 vehicles right in front is appropriate.
Let me ask a question. There's no alternative to the size of the parking spaces, the width of the drive aisle, or anything in the zoning ordinance that doesn't require a variance. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're at the bare minimum.
I just wanted to make sure of that.
There's no allowance for...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So the investigation of alternatives was just resulted in the proposal to do tandem rather than...
Exactly.
All the dimensions are the same and so forth.
They're not even allowed compact parking spaces in this situation. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might ask staff to, their analysis concluded that the hardship was in the fact that the applicants bought this property with an understanding that they didn't have to have on-site parking, that they would have parking for their business in a church across the street or a nearby church. So they had absolutely no knowledge that when they proposed to put a daycare in this facility that they wouldn't have any parking there. Their actual knowledge was that it would be elsewhere. It was your office, the zoning administrator's office, that said, no, you have to have, or was it the church, or how'd that come about?
Zoning ordinance requires that child care be parked on site. The parking in the church that was approved for the initial child care center was an error, because we were reading the zoning ordinance improperly. So even if you made the mistake the first time, the zoning administrator is not at liberty, once you know that, based on legal counsel and a different interpretation, you're not allowed to just do it again because you did it then. The other issue here is we brought this issue to light during the time when the county board was looking at parking off-site for elementary and high schools and pool facilities, because that was an issue. and the board chose not to include the nursery school daycare parking issue in that zoning ordinance amendment. That's what it would take for this daycare here to park across the street in the church if there are spaces available at the church or in another church. It needs a zoning ordinance amendment to happen.
Ms. Cozart, one additional question. In your determination as you read the zoning ordinances and determining the nature and the character of an area being detrimentally affected to, in fact, then support a variance, is the fact that the properties across the street from the property in question having, in this case, I look at the picture, there are parking spaces in the buildings across the street. Would what's across the street normally be considered as you're looking at the nature and character of properties generally? Or would you consider all the properties on the same side of the street as the affected property?
To be fair, you would have to consider all the property on the street, not just one side. You look at, everything.
And I guess just to balance both sides of the issues I'm trying to figure out, because normally if I'm just looking at it, whether this is affecting the nature of the adversely affecting the nature of the neighborhood, the fact that these houses, notwithstanding the daycare next door to it, are all of one nature leans me one way. Mm-hmm. But if you would, in looking at the application of that law, determine that the properties across the street changes the nature and character of the neighborhood, then a parking lot is not necessarily as adverse. I'm not sure where I come out with it, but that's why I wanted to know in terms of when you look at that, generally how you approach that.
We'd have to look at, to be fair to an applicant, look at the entire neighborhood, look at the entire street.
And I assume that's why you supported the recommendation of an option in this circumstance, as opposed to making the recommendation to deny outright.
That was a part of it, I think, that you do have some commercial use or some parking in the neighborhood itself.
Madam Chairman, I have a question for the staff. The daycare center next door, is that the only non-residential use on this block face? Or do we know? I mean, maybe you didn't do that research.
I think that's the only one. I believe the house next to it's a duplex, but still residential in character either way. Mm-hmm.
And I believe the testimony we had the last hearing also, that was a statement of the neighbor who testified. That was my recollection. And I think I had neighbors now nodding their head in the same.
Yeah, we did have testimony from this.
So, Mr. Russell, what would be your thoughts with regard to if there are commercial properties across the street and the parking lot? Because I'm having trouble finding hardship of the nature that we're supposed to under the statute.
I would just point out, and I wish these cases were combined, the variance and the use permit, because there's 6-8 issues of variance from the requirements that this case represents. There's new construction involved here, whereas some child care centers have been my power didn't go out. Some child care centers are approved in existing dwellings, as is the case next door. This is new construction, which brings in a lot of zoning, other zoning issues you don't have if you use existing construction. I think the character of the block face itself is possibly more important than what's across the street. The mix of uses in the block face, but I don't think the zoning ordinance causes the problem. I think the lot causes the problem. So, I really don't see that parking associated with what is arguably a commercial use for new construction on a lot justifies the granting of a variance to accommodate it. I could separate the issues if we were not being asked for a variance for the parking lot because spaces could be reduced, something could be done as a matter of right to accommodate the parking. That's why I'm bothered by them not being together, but they're not. And yet, that doesn't mean I'm in support in any way of the use permit when we get to it. It's just, it's one big package and we've got two parts. So I'm not in favor of granting variance in this case.
Mr. Smith?
Well, staff has come up with a determination as to whether there's a hardship. They say there is, and they describe it in the staff report. And I heard you, Madam Chair, struggle with the statement that you made that you're struggling with finding a hardship. And to find a hardship, you know, we have to take, as the Supreme Court said, you have to look at all reasonable beneficial uses taken as a whole. You buy a house, even if you think that you can use the parking across for what you intend to do in the house, you can, you know, that's one use of it is as a daycare center. It could be used as a residence. So many other houses on that block are being used. So there are multiple reasonable beneficial uses that could be made of that property. One that perhaps cannot, as it stands, because of the inability to have parking, is that of a commercial daycare center. And even if it were, you know, rebuilt or new structure. So I have, as much as there is a need, and as wonderful a business as it sounds like, as evidenced by the strong support by your patrons and no opposition from the neighborhood to the business itself, but just to the parking. I would try mightily to find a way, but I have trouble with that, with finding a hardship under the Supreme Court's language of you know, determining that all reasonable beneficial uses are taken as a whole are not available. So if one is not available, there are other reasonable beneficial uses. So it's hard to say that's a hardship that necessitates the granting of a variance. I guess that's where I am. It's difficult, but.
Ms. Freshman?
Well, I won't repeat what my colleagues have said. I do agree with that, and particularly because I understand that from the applicant's point of view, co-locating their two daycare centers makes a lot of sense, but I think the fault is with the property. And for that particular use, where for many other uses you wouldn't be required to have a 10-space parking lot, I just think it's inappropriate.
And I guess as the chair, I would say, in rereading again the standards that we must meet that I read at the beginning of the meeting, the provision that strikes me the most is that the hardship is not generally shared by other properties in the same zoning district. And I think that it's not shared, but because the other properties in that zoning district are using their properties for the purposes of residential living, which then triggers the issue of the variance being of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and the character of the district being changed. And I do think, notwithstanding Ms. Cozart's statement that the properties across the street and not on the street front may have impacted the staff's willingness to recommend one of the options with parking. I don't find that to be persuasive in light of the fact that all of the properties on the street front in question are residential properties and don't have parking in front of them at this time. And I think if I were buying, I think people buying the properties can distinguish across the street where everything might have commercial and or public uses with parking lots versus the other side of the street where there are residential homes. So I too am having difficulty. I do not believe that we meet the standards under the statutory obligations to grant a variance. That being said, the chair is ready to entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to add one more thing. This is an R5 lot, a standard R5 lot. It's 50 feet wide and 5,000 square feet. This is 75 feet wide and 9,000 square feet. So we can't really find hardship in and of the lot itself, and it sort of goes to the use is creating the need for the variance. And with that, I make a motion that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny variance request V1086913VA1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries and the variance has been denied. I think that makes the use permit no longer an issue. Is that correct, Mr. Noxon?
I'll call the case, and you can still vote as well. The associated use permit with this case is V-10869-13-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Maria Teresa de Saba to permit a setback of 21 feet to the light well, 23.5 feet to the eave, and 25 feet to the wall from the rear property line instead of 50 feet as required. Setback is 6.5 feet to the eave and 8 feet to the wall from the left side property line instead of 16 feet as required. Also 8.5 feet to the eave and 10 feet to the wall from the right side property line instead of 20 feet as required. It's for a new two-story child care center. This is in the R5 zoning district on a premises known as 821 23rd Street South.
The recommendation would be to adopt the attached resolution approving the use permit with conditions, but I don't believe in the, due to the determination of the board that we did not grant the variance, that this is a right matter for us because we cannot grant a use permit where the variance was not granted. So move that it be withdrawn? Is that the proper action, Mr. Russell? Mr. Nuxon?
Deny it?
Or do we need to actually vote to deny? Because I don't think we have jurisdiction to deny it.
Well, you can still vote.
We can do it anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess we move to deny, although I think legally we don't have jurisdiction to deny because there's no basis upon which we can even act on the use permit, but to provide a record for the appellant should they wish to appeal. The Board of Zoning Appeals has before it a request and a recommendation.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Russell.
Let me just say, before I make the motion, that reading the variance request, note that this use is determined to be one in R5 that requires the doubling of all the setbacks and side yards. Therefore, it speaks to me to the restrictions that are set up in the zoning ordinance on something that is not a residential use. And if the community and the county board wants non-residential uses to be permitted in some way, then they need to take care of that issue as well. I did some calculations. There would be a much smaller building built as a matter of right, even if we didn't have the parking issue. If we were still with, you could park it across the street with an agreement from the church. The building is, these are, what is it, 23 feet instead of 25 feet instead of 50 feet is required. That's an extreme variance even for us to grant. So I just wanted to make that statement. Therefore, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny case V-10869-13-UP1.
Second.
I think I'll have Ms. Freshman second that one. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. So for the record, it's 4-0. The motion carries.
Okay, the next case, this is V-10883-14-VA-1. This is also a carryover case. This is a variance request by Bill McGlone and Lisa Ruskowski to permit a total lot coverage of 40.1% instead of 32% as permitted, and this is for a new pool terrace in the rear yard. This is in the R10 zoning district on the premises known as 4521 32nd Road North.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the variance. And again, an alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA wish to grant a variance for a total lot coverage of 37.5%. And then there is the, of course, opportunity for the board to adopt the coverage as was advertised at the third alternative, which we could do if we so chose. So those are the three issues before us. And I believe do I have a speaker sleep from you?
Yes, I wonder if it would be okay to do both cases at one time. I think that'd make a lot more sense and be more logical.
It always is, but unfortunately, I think we usually do one and then the next. Mr. Noxon?
This is how it goes. I mean, I can always read the second case as well.
Okay.
I mean, that's completely fine with me.
I pointed out in the last case, sometimes that is easier. But do I have a speaker slip? Did you fill that?
Yes, ma'am, you should.
I don't.
Maybe I could suggest giving us extra time on the variance, and we won't need any time on the use permit.
Yeah.
It used to be much easier when everything was just a variance before we had the use permit and the variance as separate cases. So. The second case, the associated use permit is V-10883-14-UP-2. This is a use permit request by Bill McGlone and Lisa Ruskowski to permit a setback of 5.4 feet to the landings and stairway from the left side property line instead of 8 feet as required. Also 1.2 feet to the pool terrace from the rear property line instead of 25 feet as required. Then also an aggregate side yard of 22.4 feet instead of 24 feet as required. It's for the construction of a new left side stairway with landings and a pool terrace with a patio and steps in the rear yard. This is in the R10 zoning district on a premises known as 4521 32nd Road North.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the use permit for the pool terrace, but approving the use permit for the left side stairway with landings. And an alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA wish to grant the use permit as advertised. So we do have a few different issues here. I think giving Mr. Lawson, will 7 minutes be sufficient? And I did find your speaker slip.
Give it a try.
We'll give it a try. And if worse comes to worse, we can add a couple more minutes because you would normally have had 5 for each. So, but why don't we start with 7? And Mr. Lawson, just for the record, you're located at 1100 North Ohio Street, Arlington, Virginia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I represent the owners, and last month this was deferred to give us a chance to work with staff. We made a lot of progress, and a lot of that progress was made by adjusting the design so that certain areas were not counted towards coverage. We have lowered our coverage from 40.1% to 37.5%. And we've done all we can do as far as redesign and adjusting and so forth without removing improvements. At this time, Mr. McGlone would like to share a couple thoughts with you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. My wife Lisa and I and our 2 young teenage daughters are very excited about this pool project. We've been putting it off for years as we've been trying to save time and money to plan for it. We love our home. We bought this house when we were married in 1998. Our daughters have lived there their whole lives. We plan to be there forever. We love our neighbors. We love our neighborhood. We've worked very hard over the years to preserve the integrity of the home. In 2000, we put on the side front porch, which you can see on the left side of the house. Worked very hard, spent a lot of money to preserve the architectural integrity of the home and the character of the neighborhood. And then in 2007 and 2008, we moved out of our house. We did a whole house renovation, and rather than raise the house or move it closer to the street, we worked very hard to preserve the lines and architectural features of the home. We love the place. We're working very hard right now in the pool planning project to maintain the same architectural character and charm of the home and the neighborhood. We understand we have this full support of all of our neighbors, many of whom we've known for many years. We certainly respect the rules that we are dealing with right now. I will say that in hindsight, we realized that rather than building up, we spread the footprint of the house and ran into the coverage issues that we're dealing with here today. That was certainly not intended on our part, and we're working very hard, as Barnes has noted, to work with the staff to modify as best we can the plans to accommodate the policy concerns. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson?
Thank you. Let me talk for a moment or two about the elements of hardship. The house was already there, and it was built out before the new coverage ordinance. These owners did not have the ability to predict the future ordinance and the impact that coverage would have. The placement of the house is way back from the street. That's what I noticed when I went by there, and the picture, the aerial picture, shows that really well. The house is more than 40 feet from the street right away rather than 25. If it were 25, it'd be shoved forward. The hardship is also because this is an undersized lot. When the coverage ordinance got adopted, we expected a safety valve for smaller lots. Well, it was done for the main house coverage, but not done for overall coverage. And so we're penalized quite a bit, really, by the fact that this house is undersized. Hardship, I know what the Supreme Court said. They added that word all. They added all because that's what the Fairfax zoning ordinance has. The state statute does not have the word all. The state code says that reasonable use is being precluded, and that's what the statute has, and the General Assembly dropped approaching confiscation. The hardship can be economic, and we're at a point where the driveway, which you see in the left corner, would have to be removed in order to make this work. Let me take a moment and explain where we are. If you would look at this drawing, and it shows the driveway, we have a front porch over here on the left. We believe that front porch is going to give us an additional 3% of coverage, upping it from 32 to 35%. Not 100% sure we can take advantage of that, but we think we can. We got a ruling from the zoning administrator just this afternoon. Now, what we can do if the BZA doesn't feel that a variance, a full variance would be appropriate, if you flip the page, we can take that driveway out and we can put in the wheel strips. And that has been done before. You all are familiar with it. I've done it, I think, twice on cases before you all. And if we do that, we're at 35%. Maybe, 0.01 below that. What I would like to do now, if I could, is have the builder come forward. One of the elements of hardship is we can't lower the pool. Our property slopes like this, and to meet coverage, we could just lower the pool, but we can't. And I'd like for the builder to take a minute and explain why we cannot.
And is that one of your speakers, Mr. Lawson?
I think so.
Clayton Depew, Christopher Cahill? Okay, Christopher Cahill, yes. So why don't we actually stop Mr. Lawson's time? And we can give him 2 more minutes, and we'll give 2 minutes to Mr. Cahill. Christopher J. Cahill at 4343 Garfield Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Cahill.
Copies of the neighbor that we didn't have. The properties were transferred. So this is the approval of the third neighbor that abuts the property.
Okay.
Is that behind? Is that behind?
Yes, the house.
Okay.
The little triangle looks like it's unbuildable. Some very good suggestions were given by the staff of possibilities why this isn't a hardship. And one of the suggestions was that we could simply lower the pool. This pool is actually a very shallow pool at 5 feet, because you can see the porch that's up presently. If it's a 1-to-1 ratio that we have to stay away from that footing to keep the structural stability of the building there. So we can't put the pool right up against it unless we had planned for that building the building. And so simply lowering the pool brings us into that 45-degree trajectory, and we'd have to make the pool shallower by every portion of which we go down. And practically standing, a 5-foot pool, one can't even get underwater without dunking themselves. So this was a recreational pool from the very beginning. Basically, that was our first point of design, was to keep that away from that point there. The other portion why this was determined not to be a hardship was because decking could be used around the pool, and decking under 4 feet wouldn't have to come within this. But really, with how they want pressure-treated decking framing to work and ventilation, there is a picture of, I'll bring up the board, but half of this patio is in grade, and half of it is out, or 2/3, 1/3. But if you took the clearance you would need for the deck, it would be 1/2, 1/2. And if I take it to that point, the patio is still more than 8 inches out of grade. So I don't see where there's a net difference between the two proposed. And we've really taken extraordinary measures to capture the drainage, make sure the drainage is not ill-affecting the neighbors. We actually have the engineer here as well, and we actually are, the end product will have less effect than the present conditions. So we feel like that comment is unmerited with the new measures that we've taken to shrink the paved spaces as well as where we're capturing the driveway. The other thing about the removal of the driveway is, once again, it falls under that same thing as, yes, we would meet the letter of the law or ordinance, but we wouldn't really have a net gain because that driveway presently has a full large channel drain at the bottom of it, and all of that water is being captured into a rain garden or the planter box. So once again, we could remove it to meet the letter of the ordinance, but it doesn't really gain anything in the way of the intent of what you're trying to do.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson? If you have 2 minutes left. I gave you half a minute last time.
Should I go ahead and talk about the use permit at this point?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about the use permit for just a minute. If the property was flat and this pool deck was put on grade, it would not be coverage. And instead of the retaining wall, we would have a 6-foot-high fence, which is required by law to keep children out. And so instead of having the 7-foot fence, we just simply have the retaining wall. And this is, again, it's because of the topography and it's because of the location of the house. If the house were forward, then correspondingly the wall would be forward. We also, again, have the topography, which we're just stuck. We can't move the deck down. We can't solve the problem because of where the footer is for that back wall. That has determined where the pool can go and so forth. And so I think what I would suggest with the use permit is that the concern with the use permit seemed to be predicated upon the coverage. And we've, I think, hopefully you all will agree that we've somewhat solved that problem. And I think if this were not a steep slope backyard, instead of the wall, there would just be a fence. And so I think it's kind of a wash in, as far as the use permit is concerned. We have Mr. Dudley. He is our engineer. He submitted a speaker slip, and he is willing, if you all would like to hear it, he can explain the drainage situation and why that's not going to be a problem. It's your all's call. If you don't feel you need it, he doesn't need to share that with you.
Okay, I think that's all for this. Now, anything else? Do we need the engineer? Okay, let's go back to questions for staff.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Lawson made a point that if the lot were flat, we might not need some of these things. That's true. If the pool deck was on grade, the paving around the pool, and the pool itself was on grade, then this would not be a structure requiring variances. I'm sorry, I do that all the time. Requiring use permit.
That's correct. If it's under 8 inches, it's considered grade level, is not considered a structure that needs to meet setbacks at that point. And same with the coverage issue.
Yeah, let's speak about that. Let me talk about that for a minute. So if the lot were flat, the pool and the 7-foot wall they have at or near the property line could be built as a matter of right. It is, in fact, the wall is 7 foot, and they could build that as a matter of right anyway. Am I correct there?
That's correct.
And then we get back to then all we would have would be the coverage issue, which is the subject of the variance, and then it wouldn't be coverage, would it? I'm sorry.
The pool would still count, just not the patio area around it.
Patio area, would that solve the problem?
Correct, it would.
I'm sorry to make this a comprehensive examination. I've done a lot of calculations here on this too. In addition to that, this lot is non-conforming to area by 900 square feet. In other words, it's 9,100 and 10,000 is required in an R10. And then in addition, the original construction of this house, which does anybody know when the original house was built? 1941, so it predates the 1950 ordinance. Maybe I should let other people ask questions before I say no.
I guess my only question sort of goes along the same thing. So I know this is really weird, but I thought, could you bring the lot into like take it out of grade and bring it all to grade and then not have to deal with these issues? Not that I think that that's a requirement we could do, but is that an option?
The issue with zoning is every structure is measured at a height from the existing natural grade. So they grade it, they're changing the grade. It's not above the natural grade anymore.
Okay, I don't understand that. Say that again.
A structure's height under the zoning ordinance is measured from the existing natural grade, so the grade that's there now.
So the grade when that structure was built
Exactly.
is the grade that's determined, not the grade that they would be putting the pool into. So
Exactly.
they can't cure the defect simply by filling in the topography,
Exactly.
which goes, and I guess that goes to my support of this is a hardship on the property that flows from the property, to Mr. Lawson's point.
That's interesting that he brings that up because we went through that some years ago. You could do if you could change the grade, you could raise the grade on your lot. Let's say you raise it up 4 feet above the street, and then calculate your height to make your building even that much taller. And so that was kind of the worst case scenario for discussions around that.
Yeah, but even in that circumstance, wasn't the ordinance designed, though, that you could take your grade from the point at the highest existing topography to get your 35 feet? I mean, you don't take it if your lot slopes all the way down as that's your 35 feet.
Well,
I mean,
we could have a work session probably on these various things, but you can't change, you have to use the grade before you apply for the permit to build whatever it is you're going to build.
but it's the grade at what you're... Right, but it's it's graded where you're building, so that if they were building this property at the back end of the property as opposed to the front end of the property, we're taking the grade at the point that they're going to build it, not... I'm just thinking about, I know some of the houses that have been built, and they take it at the place they're building to assess it. And
Well, the ordinance was changed some years ago that you calculate height based on the 4 corners or whatever of the structure itself. There was a time when you took height from right in front of the house on the street.
Right.
So you could, if you had a slope down from the street, you could hang a house down over the hill and have it be as tall as the next. That was ended when they went to the 4 corners.
Yeah,
so
and-
your point
yeah.
is well.
Yeah, and so, that's what I was, which is all, as you say, very fascinating and would be fun, to do workshops on, but it helps to explain the hardship, I think, that does exist to this property, given the ordinances and the fact that the ordinances have changed since the time the buildings were built.
Madam Chairman, one more point. I did some calculations this afternoon and struggling with this issue. And if this lot were conforming, I came up with calculations that showed that they wouldn't need a coverage variance because they are, well, at least this afternoon, at 37.5%, they would cover 2,912, and for a 10,000 square foot lot, you could get 3,200. So there seems to me to be a basis for the differences as well. So.
And I guess I sort of, not doing the fancy math that you do, Mr. Russell, I had looked at the issue that's come back before us before, which is the difference in terms of the lot. We don't have an R9, we have the R8 and the R10, and the lot size, had it been an R9, we don't know what the application of the rule might have been, but it's quite probable that the lot coverage would not have been drawn that way. And these ones that fell in the middle create difficulties because I don't think people intended that there'd be a problem. I think, Mr. Lawson, you're correct that the intent was that there would be some reasonableness applied to this, or there would be an exception in circumstances such as this. You were doing really well. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I'll make a motion if you want.
Okay.
I'll see if this flies. Do we want to make two or one?
I think you have to make them individually.
You have to make two.
Do two, one for the variance.
I had to do two last time. I'm going to make you do two.
Sometime too.
Yeah.
County board makes one.
Well, if I'm denying.
True. You could be, I am going, let me set this up. I am going to make a motion to approve the request at 37.5, which is what we had, was delivered to us on Friday. I know that the applicant has done a little more reduction. I didn't quite get what that brought it to 35 by doing some porch and doing some strips on the driveway and stuff. To me, the original request at 37.5 is justified. Therefore, because of the sloping nature of the lot, the area that is non-conforming of the lot, the situation of the setback in the front being 15 feet further than it should be, and I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals, if I can find it, adopt the resolution approving variance V1083314 VA3 at a coverage of 37.5%. And somebody tell me if that's correct?
Yep. Okay. Instead of 32, yep. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? And I guess I would only say that I have a little more concern with the 37.5. I felt more comfortable with what the applicant was talking about today because that put it closer to the R8, the lot coverage. So just want to say that. Ms. Freshman?
I have not been particularly inclined to be favorable to this project, but I'm persuaded by the lot size as an acceptable hardship and the topography as an acceptable hardship. I would prefer it to be, I think, 35%, but the little twists and turns that were suggested in order to get there didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, like pulling out the driveway. So I'll support the motion.
And I guess for just a final point on that point, I think to get to the lower lot coverage, it would require pulling out the driveway, but the testimony given by the engineer indicating that the current driveway actually has a better drainage and sewer system, which is the whole reason we have lot coverage, does persuade me that it would be unreasonable for us to request compliance with the letter of the law in order to avoid the spirit of the law in this circumstance, given the evidence we have that the existing driveway does in fact help with drainage and all of the issues that we care about with regard to the lot coverage. So I just put that on the record. And I think at this point, we're ready for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Now we have the use permit.
And it's already been called, correct?
Yes, it's been called. So I'm ready for a motion unless there's any further discussion on the use permit.
Madam Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion. I'd also like to preface that a little bit, just for the record. One of the things that was persuasive to me about the location of the pool and, you know, its relationship to neighbors and so forth is that it has a 7-foot wall near or on the property line, and that 7-foot wall could be built there by right. What's sort of on the other side of it is not really, you know, won't be seen necessarily. You might hear people splashing around, but I was persuaded that the difference between a pool that's allowed by right, if it's all the way to the same grade as the bottom of the wall, or whether it's a few feet up to the bottom of a wall that's allowed by right, just didn't seem like there was much difference there to me. And again, we have a slope. They'd probably have a deeper pool if it was a flat lot. Drainage issues, and we've had this before. These are building code and Department of Environmental Services issues and are not in the zoning ordinance. We're being asked for the placement of structures and those sorts of issues in terms of what the zoning says, that it should be so many feet back from something, from a line or from the house or from whatever, but not so many feet unless there's drainage issues. And those are administrative. They're actually more powerful. We can't vary those things. You've got to deal with the water, and you've got to do it under building code and other environmental laws. Zoning laws can be, considered changed by us and by the county board, but those can't. So, good luck with those if they turn out to have issues with them. But the laws that are in place that seem to get stricter every year, I'm persuaded will take care of them. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve the use permit
at the top.
V-1088314 UP2. Approve the resolution.
The alternative resolution.
The alternative resolution, V-1088314 UP2, subject to the conditions listed in the alternative resolution.
It's been moved by Mr. Russell, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any final comments and by anyone? Okay, I actually just want to make one comment in response to Mr. Russell. When I talk about the drainage and the water issues, I look at that in the context of the lot coverage questions, not in the determination of the use permit. So that's not an issue that's really relevant to me on that part. And I agree with Mr. Russell, it's not something we're considering, but just wanted to clarify the record if I had indicated anything differently. But as to the variance, I think it's relevant in terms of lot coverage. That the concern that prompted the lot coverage changes was really the density of the impact of water and things on property. I also just wanted to say that in light of the variance, I find support for the use permit. I'm not sure that in the absence of the variance, I would have found the support for the use permit. But in understanding the hardships that exist, then it seems reasonable to grant the full request as it was made, as opposed to making any restrictions on the decking and other parts around the pool. And if there's no further comments, call for question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Okay. Next case, Mr. Noxon.
Next case tonight is V-10891-14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by David and Jennifer Michaels to permit a setback of 13.3 feet to the areaway, 16.7 feet to the eave of a new two-story rear addition.
Noxon, can I take one question before they all leave? I'm sorry, I didn't call Clayton Depew to the, was that all right, Mr. Depew? Especially given the action we did. You were speaking in favor, and I'm sorry, with all Mr. Lawson's extra witnesses, I forgot. but let me just put on the record that Clayton Depew of 4527 North 32nd Road, Arlington, Virginia, did come tonight in support of the application to speak on behalf of his neighbors. So thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Noxon.
I'll just start that one over, no problem. This is case number V-10891-14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by David and Jennifer Michaels to permit a setback of 13.3 feet to the areaway, 16.7 feet to the eave of a new two-story rear addition, and 16.9 feet to the wall of the new two-story rear addition and rear deck from the rear property line instead of 25 feet is required. It's for a new two-story rear addition with a deck and a basement areaway. It's in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 510 North Florida Street.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution approving the subject use permit with conditions. Any questions of staff? Seeing none at this time, are David and/or Jennifer Michaels present? Mr. Michaels? After the last cases, this should be a little bit easier. Can you tell us what you're doing and what you'd like for us to do?
Sure. We are looking to build an addition to the back of the house. We have 2 kids in diapers and this triangular shape lot, so we want to maintain our residents, and we have great neighbors and love Arlington, so we hope that you approve our permit. I'll just keep this simple. And part of it is going past the setback of the rear. And we have signatures from our neighbors directly affected behind us. And the neighbors on both sides are renters, and one house behind us are renters. So, we sent those packets accordingly. But everyone seems to be approved of this, even a lady who's expecting in April. So I think I need to buy her some Bose cancellation headsets if this gets approved.
And the pie-shaped lots are very interesting.
What's that?
The pie-shaped lots are very interesting.
Yes. It's all the other houses in the neighborhood are straight back, and they have these nice square rectangular lots. I'll just open it up for questions for me then.
Any questions of the applicant?
I do, Madam Chairman. You just mentioned you have support of neighbors. We don't have anything in our package.
I think we do.
I have it here. It was really cold the past couple months, so we couldn't get to door until just recently. But we have signatures.
Oh, perfect.
That's.
Could you give those to Mr. Russell?
The staff report says
Nothing.
not received any signatures from neighbors or support. So.
Sorry, it's very recent.
It's great.
As you can see, the dates were this week.
We look for those.
Keep a copy for your records?
Yes.
Are this all of them? Are they the same?
Are they
I think
all the
these are
same?
copies.
Is the 2 pages all the same?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Thank you.
And this indicates as well that you did send a copy of the blueprints to the Civic Association, Bluemont Civic Association. Is that correct? And no comment was received.
Correct. They actually gave us really good guidance on how to go through the process of obtaining signatures. They worked.
Let me keep that one. 2 pages. Okay. All right. Thank you for the addition. Any further questions? No speakers. Is that correct? I don't have any slips. I'm just verifying. All right. No further speakers on this matter. I think we're ready for a motion. Mr. Smith, do you have a question?
No question.
Okay, Ms. Freshman.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yep.
I move this Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution granting use permit V-10891-14-UP1, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Mr. Smith. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next case is V-10892-14 7-14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Sonia Palmieri and William Sadath to permit a setback of 7.1 feet to the wall of a new second-story addition and the porch base from the left side property line instead of 10 feet is required. Then also an aggregate side yard of 14.2 feet instead of 18 feet is required. It's for the construction of a new second-story addition and a new front porch. This is in the R6 zoning district on a premises known as 3133 Key Boulevard.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution approving the subject use permit with conditions. Any questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, Sonia Palmieri or William Sudha present? They are not here. Mr. Noxon, did you receive any word from them?
I did not.
Okay, is the board in?
I believe they were coming tonight.
No, I don't believe I have any speakers for that case.
Well, one question I would have, Madam Chair, would be what efforts were made to contact neighbors? Because, again, the staff report says that they don't have any signatures in support of their proposal.
I agree, Mr. Smith. However, I would note that the number of buildings in this block and in this neighborhood that have received either by right or built before the time make this request not inconsistent with the neighborhood. And I think we've actually granted other porches in the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, and I'm obviously, I'm a supporter of porches. My only concern is from the neighbor who is going to be, whose property is 7.1 feet away, if this were to be built. Just that they had been briefed on the project and expressed their, and in the applicant's absence.
The flip side of that is there was notice provided to the neighborhood, and we have no opposition either. I think if they want to stand on the application, we can act on it. There's nothing that requires them to be present. It's just they run the risk, if they're not here, of us having questions that we can't answer, and therefore them not getting their variance or use permit. I generally. I didn't think so.
Maybe that was. Okay, maybe he's not a part of. Well, that's my only concern, Madam Chair.
I guess my question would be, is there an inclination to deny? If there is, then at that point I'd be more interested in taking a motion to defer. But if there's not a motion, if there's an inclination to grant, because we do have sufficient evidence to do so, then I'd rather just act and not have this back on our calendar if we don't need it.
I wouldn't, I don't have an inclination to deny, but I would, I'm more inclined to defer versus acting with, because I would want the neighbor to comment on the efforts to communicate with their neighbors.
We're just verifying that you're not here on 892, are you, sir? No. Okay. Either way, the chair is prepared to take a motion.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Russell.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer the subject case V1089214 UP1 to the April Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and second to defer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. So that's 3-0, 3-1, sorry. Okay, next case, Mr. Noxon.
Our next case is V-10893-14-UP-1, and this is a use permit request by Vernon Perkins to permit a setback of 4 feet to the air conditioning unit from the right side property line instead of 5 feet as required for a new right side air conditioning unit. This is in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 1034 22nd Street South.
And the, sure I have the right one. Recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the subject use permit And an alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA wish to approve the request.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Russell.
question for the record. It's 1 foot. It could be here except for it's 1 foot, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so 4 feet instead of 5 feet. And they really don't have, standard units, they really don't have the ability to meet a 5 foot setback.
They can. I think it's usually the contractor's specs as how far off the house they need to place it. And some of them say 1 foot, some of them say 6 inches, some of them say 2 feet.
And we have two cases tonight.
Information.
We have two cases tonight, and one of the packets actually talks specifically about that, and I can't remember if that's this one or the other one. I think it might be the other one.
Again, the absence of,
Well,
maybe the applicant's here today.
yeah, we don't know that yet.
Okay, good.
I haven't gotten that far, Mr. Smith. Okay, if no further questions of staff at this time? Okay, is Vernon Perkins here? Okay, Mr. Perkins, could you come forward? And maybe you can address that as part of your
Yes, good evening.
issue.
The house was built with only 8-foot clearance on both sides. The current zoning, I believe, is 10 feet and 8 feet. If I had one side with 10 feet, this wouldn't be an issue. If you notice the photograph of the back of the house, which is the next page in from the back, I'd gladly put the unit back there, but there's an electrical meter on the far left corner, which I understand requires 3-foot clearance. Window where there is just ground grade. And then there's a doorway and a patio, and if you look at the plat, the patio then covers the balance of the back of the house and leads to the side walkway access from the driveway to the rear of the house. It seems appropriate to me, if you look at the other photographs of the neighboring house, actually the space between the house, there, the other house, the wall addressing my house is a blank wall. It's actually a foundation and a garage. Up until the only windows on that level of the neighboring house are at the rear, and there is a photo that explains that.
Is that this photo here?
There's no. Well, that shows it also, but there's another photo from behind my house that shows that those windows actually face the back of the house, so a unit in the back would ironically be more visible to the neighbor. You'll see even my house, I do have a picture window there towards the front. That area is below the front yard grade, and those planter boxes then lead up to the front yard. So from the street, there's not much visibility. And you see there's a lilac bush sort of at the center of the house, and then I don't know what that bush is called, but it's...
Clara.
Oh, okay. Seen it many years and never knew. But the unit would essentially go between those, which would screen it both from the rear neighbors, and you really wouldn't see it from the street. And you see that the adjoining neighbor is pretty much a blank wall at that point. And the contractors are telling me they'd like a setback of 1.5 feet, and with units running a couple to 1.5 feet in diameter, I kind of had to stop the process. I was in the process of getting several bids, and in discussion realized the limitations. So that's why I brought the request forward. Frankly, in the back, more neighbors would see the unit. In terms of the impact of sound, the two window units that I have, they're not actually in the windows, they're mounted directly into the apertures and the brick wall. They were done that way before I owned the house. They're generating noise into that same space, and actually may be higher up and closer to the second floor windows on the neighboring house.
So I guess, can you address Mr. Russell's question, and have you gotten that far to make sure that the request you're making will give you sufficient set off from the house to the distance that you're asking?
Yeah, if under the assumption that it's 1.5 foot setback from the house, and then another couple feet, that's a minimum of 2.5 feet. It could be up to 2.5 foot wide unit, depending on which one is specified. So that's going to set it at least over the 5 foot setback. It might be 4.5 feet by the time it's done, instead of 4 feet from the lot line, depending on the size of the condenser unit.
And I guess the reason I'm asking, though, is you kind of needed to know what size of the condenser you want, because the setback we're giving, you have to put a unit in that's going to make sure that it won't exceed that setback.
Absolutely. I mean, I was told that there are units available that are 2 feet in diameter, so that would be 3.5 feet off the house, but with an 8 foot setback, that still puts it 1/2 foot over. And so I know I can buy units that would fit that specification. Actually, when I made the application, it was suggested I add the extra 6 inches in case I run into an issue with a model number or something of that nature.
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm clarifying, because if you did run into that problem and it exceeded this, then you'd have to come back to us again. That was why I was asking.
Right, I understand that. At some point, this is only for the upper floor. Frankly, it's a masonry structure, and the basement, I'm not sure how I can air condition it. It stays pretty cool, and the house is well insulated. So, but if I can take care of the upper floor, that will solve many of the problems.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have one question of the applicant,
Yeah.
and it goes to whether you've made contact with your neighbor.
Boris Scott, the number I have for him, he's not responding. He actually has been renting the house out for many years, and I haven't seen him for about a year.
So you tried, and
I tried going to the tenants and a couple different times, and I don't know if they were home and didn't like the looks of me, or just weren't around when I had the opportunities, and then sadly I've been quite busy since then, but I did make an effort to talk to him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions of staff or the applicant? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
well, Madam Chair, I would move to grant the, I'd utilize the alternative resolution, which is approving what the applicant sought. So I would move that the Board of Zoning Appeals grant V-10893-14-UP1, the alternative resolution subject to its conditions.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none. The motion carries 4-0. You have your permit.
All right, the next case is V-10894-14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by John Heisler to permit a setback of 5 feet to the eave and 6 feet to the wall of a new one-story basement areaway enclosure from the left side property line instead of 10 feet as required. Also an aggregate side yard of 12 feet instead of 18 feet as required. It's for a new enclosure around an existing left side basement areaway. This is in the R27 district. Premises known as 1912 South Nelson Street.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution approving the subject use permit with conditions. Any questions of staff?
Yes, I have a question. It appears when you look at it that it's sort of halfway enclosed or temporarily enclosed or something. What's the status of this? Is this because somebody raised the issue when it was a homegrown project? Oh, there you go. That's exactly what I meant. Can you tell us about the status of it, please?
Yes, that's the structure that was temporarily erected, but it hasn't been installed. It was just put there on a temporary basis, pending approval by the board.
So is this what it's going to look like?
Oh, no. I certainly hope not. Basically, what's going to happen is it will be raised up just above that window area and essentially providing shelter. Think of it as a lean-to or a portico. And the whole intent is to prevent water from entering into that stairwell, which leads to the basement. It's been flooded 4 times in the 3.5 years that we've lived there, and it seemed to be the least expensive way to resolve the problem.
So this was just temporarily to keep the water from continuing to go in the basement?
It was, and obviously with wind damage and whatnot, it doesn't look as nice as it used to, but yes, this was just a temporary stopgap measure. It's not affixed to anything, it's just there to preclude water from entering into the basement stairwell.
Basically a 2x4 or sheeting and
that is correct.
Plastic over the top?
I'm very relieved to hear that.
I think from the other side it looked more permanent because you see the back of the, I keep forgetting what those things are called. What are these, where the stairs go down?
Areaway. They're a little, this one's a little different than what we usually see. Usually we see just a little lip above the grade and then it goes down. Maybe they have a railing, but this one actually has a wall as opposed to a railing. So it almost looks like it's already a structure of some sort, but that's just how it was approved.
And the roof line will be angled as opposed to flat when it, hopefully when it's finalized.
This out from the house, isn't that correct? Down?
Away from the side of the house.
So that it gets the rain off of the house.
Same angle as the roof line, correct.
No, it'll just, where is it going to be in relation to the window?
Above the window. The roof line will be directly above the window, and there's going to be pillars so as to not obstruct the view out the window, which is the only window that side of the house.
On him almost like an awning, but with structure.
Believe me, I almost wish I had just gotten one of those temporary awnings at this stage. It's been a very trying exercise, but it beats getting the basement flooded every 4 months.
Part of it is the awning would still be open, and I think what you're proposing will hopefully be a better fix for you in the long run.
Yes, that's the idea. It will be open, really just a roof, a temporary roof over there.
No, a permanent roof instead of the temporary.
Sorry.
Any further questions of the applicant, or did you want to say anything further? We just jumped in with questions. Did you have anything prepared you wanted to share with us?
In respect to everybody's time and the hour, I'll defer unless you have further questions.
Okay, I'm not sure that we do. If not, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Russell.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the resolution approving use permit V1089414 UP1 with conditions included in the resolution.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Good luck.
Thank
you. Okay, next case.
This is case number V-10896. That's 14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Mary Howd and Thomas Selsley to permit a setback of 9.3 feet to the new 2-story rear addition from the right side property line instead of 10 feet as required. It's for the construction of a new 2-story rear addition with a deck. This is in the R27 zoning district on a premises known as 846 North Burlington Street.
Madam Chairman?
Didn't we miss, yeah, I was going to say, I think we missed 10-895.
Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. We skipped one. Okay, we'll do that again. We're at V-10895-14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by David Bowser to permit a setback of 5.8 feet between an existing detached garage and a new 2-story rear addition instead of 8 feet as required. It's for a new 2-story rear addition to the home. It's in the R8 district, premises known as 2932 John Marshall Drive.
Okay, and is that Mr. Canellis leaving the room by any chance? Okay. I'm sorry, just again for the record, let me put on the record that in the last case, I guess that was 9-4, Carmen Canellis was also present, speaking on, to speak in favor of the request for the roof. So if she's still here, I want to thank her for her time and her patience for being here. And I'm sorry, these sheets tonight were a little more confusing. Okay. In 895, the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution approving the subject use permit with conditions. And on this, let me just say we have the applicant's agent, Paul Arquette. Present. Let me see if there's any questions of staff first, Mr. Arquette, and we'll call you right up. Okay, none? Why don't you come on up, Mr. Arquette? And you are at with Keybridge Architects, 1530 Key Boulevard, number 408, Arlington, Virginia.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I am the architect for Mr. and Mrs. David and Heather Bowser, the owners of 2932 John Marshall Drive. As you know, Mr. Bowser is making a very modest request. He and his wife would like to move the rear wall of their house extended out 2.2 feet. This would bring the rear of their house to a distance of 5.8 feet from a detached garage instead of the current 8.0 feet. This will not adversely affect the health or safety of the people residing in the neighborhood. It won't be detrimental to the public welfare. It will not conflict with the purpose of the master plan, and it will be compatible with the development of the surrounding neighborhood. I will add that this will only increase the footprint of the house by 1%.
Mm-hmm. Could you go back to the previous picture? Are they essentially going to make it flush with
the second floor? That is correct. Yes, okay. That is the intent.
So will all the way across?
That's right. Yeah, the second floor would be pulled all the way across. The overhang of the second floor would be pulled all the way across to the corner of the house, and it will be built. The first floor would also be built out flush with the overhanging second floor. Mm-hmm. Mr. and Mrs. Bowser have 3 young children. They have a 5-year-old son with special needs. They have a 3-year-old daughter. They have a 1-year-old daughter. Being a 2-story house, they need to carry their children up and down a staircase. And in my 25 years of working as an architect, this house has the most dangerous staircase I have ever seen. The purpose of this project is to reconfigure the staircase, put in a safe one. The current one has risers that are literally 9 to 10 inches high, whereas the code only allows 8-inch tall risers. The treads are only about 8 inches deep instead of the currently required 10 inches deep. The Bowsers have fallen on the staircases, and so have their guests. Fortunately, so far, there have been no serious injuries. In order to put in a safe staircase, some reconfiguration of the interior spaces would be required, and the only practicable way to do this would be to move out the rear wall by a small amount. Therefore, on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Bowser, I respectfully request the approval of this request.
And as you heard tonight, one of the questions we often ask are regarding neighbors' support or support letters, and the packet indicates there are none. Do you know what efforts have been made on behalf of your clients to contact neighbors?
The neighbor that lives in the house that's currently shown in the slide was, at the time the variance, at the time the use permit request was being put together, this neighbor was on an extended vacation to Florida, and Mr. and Mrs. Bowser were not able to get in touch with them. This is the only neighbor that would actually see the addition. I did recommend to Mr. and Mrs. Bowser that they procure signatures from other neighbors. Due to time limitations with raising their children, including their special needs child, they were unable to get other signatures.
We like to always have that on the record, though. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand.
Any further questions?
Question?
Yes.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution granting use permit V-10895-14-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
count me as an aye as well. Any opposed? Carries 4-0.
Thank you very much, and good night.
Okay, to the next case, second time here. This is V-10896-14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Mary Howd and Thomas Elsley to permit a setback of 9.3 feet to the new two-story rear addition from the right side property line instead of 10 feet as required. It's for the construction of a new two-story rear addition with a deck. This is in the R27 zoning district on the premises known as 846 North Burlington Street.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution approving the subject use permit with conditions. Any questions of staff? Seeing none. Mary, is it Hod or Tom Selsley present? It looks like both. Good evening. Thank you for hanging in here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In the interest of time, we find the recommendation very acceptable. The conditions are acceptable. We're available for questions. We request approval for everything as prepared in the packet, and we're available for questions. Also, our builder is present, available for questions as well.
Did a very nice packet. I thought the designs were excellent. We appreciate all the work that you put into this.
Thank you.
Before we move on, Mr. Smith, I had one question to Mr. Noxon. On page 2 of the staff report, again, I'm not sure if this one we missed a little bit, but the applicants have proposed to construct a new two-story rear addition measuring 14.9 feet wide by 14.8 feet deep. The addition will be located 9.3 feet from the right side property line and will not have any further eave encroachment into the side yard. Do we need to put in there, repeat that it's instead of the 10 feet as required, or?
No, because that's actually advertised in the subject at the top.
Okay.
So that's just the explanation of what they're doing, how far it's going to be, how large the structure's going to be.
Yeah, I just, the way the next sentence read, I wasn't completely sure, because you say, in addition, the applicants wish to build a rear deck, however, this structure is permitted to project into the side yard setback. Okay, so you were just trying to put that into English. Okay, I got it. See, it confused me when it wasn't in non-English.
Need any setback reduction, it's okay where it is, it's just the addition.
Okay. Yeah, I was just looking for the by right language in my head, sorry. Okay, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached resolution granting use permit V-10896-14-UP1, subject to the conditions listed in the staff resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Smith and Ms. Freshman. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Good luck, and I hope you enjoy your new project.
Our next case is V-10897-14-UP-1. And this is a use permit request by Tim and Andrea Belair to permit a setback of 5.6 feet to the air conditioning unit instead of 8 feet as required, and 7.2 feet to the front porch and 9.8 feet to the new rear addition from the 22nd Street South right-of-way instead of 25 feet as required, and also 17.9 feet to the porch from the South Joyce Street right-of-way instead of 25 feet as required, and 6.1 feet to the porch from the right side property line instead of 8 feet as required, and finally 6.8 feet between the new rear addition and an existing shed instead of 8 feet as required. And this is all for the construction of a new one-story rear addition with a rooftop deck, a new front porch, and a new left side air conditioning unit. This is in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2116 South Joyce Street.
Okay. And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the request for the air conditioning unit, but approving a setback of 7.2 feet to the front porch 10 feet to the new rear addition from the 22nd Street South right-of-way, 17.9 feet to the porch from the South Joyce Street right-of-way, 6.1 feet to the porch from the right side property line, and 6.8 feet between the new rear addition and an existing shed with conditions. So the recommendation is to adopt everything except with regard to the air conditioning. Any questions of staff? In that case, are Tim or Andrea Belair present? For the record, both are present. And I believe yours was the report that actually said what your setback was for the air conditioning unit that you wanted to put in from the house.
Thank you for your time. Basically, what I wanted to do is just read the statement that I've provided here, which hopefully will provide you with enough information to find the substantial hardships that we have with our property. Based on the following unique set of circumstances, we respectfully request that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached alternative resolution approved as advertised. As stated in the county's staff analysis section, page 3, paragraph 3, our property is severely substandard in width and area, making expansion of the home nearly impossible. The lot has a buildable area of only 7 feet by 65 feet. Placement of the air conditioning unit on the right side property line would be impossible. Our existing home is only 6.1 feet from the right side property line and 12.2 feet from our neighbor's home. Given building standoff requirements and the condenser size, it would place the unit about 1.6 feet from the right side property line, which I'm sure is unacceptable, and we wouldn't want to do that to our neighbors. Placement of the air conditioning in the backyard would severely restrict our ability to even use what little space we have left. Most properties in our neighborhood average about 6,000 square feet. Our lot is a modest 4,000 square feet. And our existing condenser unit sits just 2 feet from our patio, which makes it almost impossible to sit back there when the thing runs. Placement of the air conditioning unit on the 22nd Street side is the most reasonable choice. Our existing home is 7.2 feet from the 22nd Street property line, with an additional 6.5 feet of space between the street curb, which would create the appearance of a larger setback, which would be about 12 feet. In addition, the unit would be over 40 feet away from our nearest neighbor. We also intend to use decorative foliage to mask the condenser, as I've shown in the pictures that you have there. And then lastly, and most importantly, we've gotten overwhelming support from our neighbors. We've received 27 signatures from our neighbors in support of our proposal, which includes all of the neighbors located across the street from us and whom share a lot line with us. So for those reasons, we request that, that you would approve the attached alternative resolution.
Thank you very much. You did an excellent job both speaking tonight and putting your packet together. We really appreciate all your time. Any questions? If not, the chair is prepared to take a motion.
Madam Chair, I am persuaded that the placement of the air conditioning unit 5.6 feet, granting a setback of 5.6 feet for the air conditioning unit is not a problem. The earlier case, we granted 5 feet. So I would move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the alternative resolution granting the applicants, granting V-10897-14-UP1, granting the applicant what they sought and what was advertised.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Good. Thank you.
For just a minute.
Yes.
Okay. This is case number V-10898-14-VA-2, and this is a variance request by Michael Sorrento to permit a main building footprint coverage of 37.8% instead of 33% as permitted and a total lot coverage of 58.4% instead of 43% as permitted. This is to maintain 2 existing decks, a raised patio, and a gravel driveway in their current locations. It's in the R6 zoning district on a premises known as 2105 South Fillmore Street.
And the recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution denying the variance for the patio, gravel driveway, and the second level deck, but approving a variance to permit a main building footprint coverage of 35.8% instead of 33% as permitted, and a total lot coverage of 45.1% instead of 43% as permitted, in order to maintain the right rear deck constructed by the previous property owner. And alternative resolutions have been provided should the BZA wish to grant the variance as advertised or deny the variance. And in this matter, let's see, I believe we have David Isaac appearing as the representative for Michael Sorrento. Is that correct? And is Mr. Sorrento here as well? Okay, so please, both of you come forward. And David Isaac resides at 3033 Silent Valley Drive, Fairfax?
Yes, ma'am.
Good to see you. It's been a while since we've seen you as well, Mr. Isaac.
I've been here once or twice before.
I know, not recently, though.
It's been a few months. Pardon my absence. We do have some letters we brought with us. This is a very unusual situation in many ways.
Yeah, Mr. Isaac, let me just ask, is this another circumstance where it would be wise for us to call together the variance and the use permit at the same time, or should we do them separately?
I think they should be talked about at the same time together. It's almost impossible to separate one.
Right, that's what I was thinking in terms of this issue. So why don't we hold one moment and let Mr. Noxon call the use permit as well?
Okay, this is the associated use permit. This is V-10898-14-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Michael Sorrento to permit a setback of 6.9 feet to a masonry barbecue from the left side property line instead of 8 feet as required, and a setback of 1.5 feet to a first floor deck, 2.6 feet to a masonry barbecue and raised patio, 14.7 feet to a second floor deck, and 22.1 feet to an outdoor kitchen from the rear property line instead of 25 feet as required. This is to maintain 2 existing decks, raised patio, an outdoor barbecue, and an outdoor kitchen, all in their current locations. This is in the R6 zoning district on a premises known as 2105 South Fillmore Street.
And the recommendation here is to adopt the attached resolution denying the use permit for the patio and barbecue, the gravel driveway, and the second level deck, but approving a use permit to maintain the right rear deck constructed by the previous property owner. Again, alternative resolutions have been provided should the BZA wish to grant the use permit as advertised or deny the use permit. So now that we have them both, let's go ahead and have you start, Mr. Isaac.
Okay, if I may start, I say, you know from the survey plat, the lot has uniqueness and hardships, and it's reasonably small lot with a very odd configuration. It's at the end of a cul-de-sac, and the backyard is basically a ski slope. It is an extremely steep backyard. Mr. Sorrento purchased this several years ago with the rear deck existing from apparently back in '89. A man got a variance and proceeded to build something that didn't match what originally was on the variance, and it was never picked up by the county. We've been given this, I think you'll have a copy of this configuration, and the way Arlington calculates these, as far as the square footage area goes, if any part of the deck goes above 4 feet, they count the entire deck as above 4 feet, the way the rules are written now, which exacerbates the calculations. And I know the county is, we've heard favorable comments from the zoning in favor of allowing the deck to remain. To lose the deck would be to lose one of the main reasons Mr. Sorrento bought the house. He bought it in good faith with the deck there. And he has tried to maintain this steep backyard and prevent any erosion or anything else. We don't see any problem like that. I've also been given a topo map. His lot's steep. As you leave it, it's steeper. Behind his house is a common area of the homeowners association. There are no houses directly in back of his house in a close proximity. They're down the hill behind the trees. The area behind his house is association common ground. As we move to the other side of the backyard, it is less steep on that side. He was trying to do a patio and conform the patio to the contours of the ground. He stepped it down a few steps, but it still required his putting a retaining wall at the far end. He should have gotten a proper permit for the wall. I've admonished him for that. But it was a sincere effort to improve the property and stabilize the ground, and it does make a usable backyard. The man likes to cook out. So, we are hoping we can work out something on this patio. My biggest concern on this property, and we really want to work something out, concerns the front of the property where this driveway is. It's a rather like a stock market chart of a front yard configuration. He doesn't even have a standard driveway entrance. I mean, if this property were developed today, there would be a typical circular cul-de-sac. Everybody would have the standard driveway. This is probably from back in the 50s, and he just doesn't. Actually, to enter his property, he drives partway over the easement, the property to the left. And the other part of his driveway entrance is bordered by other easements, and he doesn't have a typical driveway entrance throat and a very narrow driveway. He brought in some gravel trying to make a turnaround, spare parking space. The street is also, it's a very narrow, winding street. The neighbors on the street have parking situations already, I believe, including one handicap space. And from what we've spoken, we have brought some letters from the neighbors. Anything we can do to not have to park one more car on the street to use this would be a benefit to the neighborhood. When I first saw this, I didn't like the way he had done it. What we're proposing is if we could work with zoning to reconfigure and find a surface substance, make it a brick patio or a pervious type of a surface, something that would be acceptable to zoning, where we could get a turnaround. And we really need the turnaround. It does serve as a spare parking space occasionally. But without it, he really cannot get in and out of his garage. And we are willing to work with the zoning to see if there's something we can do in reconfiguring this, because it's larger, the gravel area is larger than it needs to be, and then taking it to a surface that would be a patio type, a brick paver, a pervious surface, even if we had to hopefully not, we had to rework the driveway a little bit. I'd say this, and I want to compliment Mr. Knox, and worked very hard interpreting things for me and been very helpful in my preparing this, but I do disagree with the zoning's conclusion on this front entrance. I do consider this an extreme hardship of an entrance. I heard your case earlier about the 10 parking spaces in the front yard type thing. We're not looking for anything excessive. We need something minimum for a car turnaround, and we are willing to work with the zoning people to see if we can work a design which would also lower possibly lower the square footage. And one of my comments is if this driveway entrance isn't something we could fully resolve tonight, I would ask for possibly a continuance of this to give me one more month to work with zoning to see if we can come up with something that is agreeable. Because in my opinion, this front entrance is a true hardship. And would you like to speak some, Mike, on some of the other issues?
If permitted?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Again, my name is Michael Sorrento. With me is my fiancée, Jeanette. We're both the owners of the property. I appreciate your time. I know how difficult this is, and I want to first apologize for, certainly I do believe that I recognize that I did some construction unappropriately, so I've worked with the inspector, and I want to thank Mr. Noxon for all the hard work he's put in to help us get on the right path. It's my goal to correct all the wrongdoings. I want to express the extreme hardship, and I do recognize, that my goal here, again, to make the property useful to us, but again, to make it nice for the neighborhood, and currently right now it's not in a nice state, because one of the things I've done is stopped all activities until I know what direction I can head. So I've kind of left in a little bit of a disrepair or a not complete repair. But most importantly, if we just looked at the front of the property here, we have only 24 foot of street across to there, and that would be there, other than, if you can see in the picture that's on the screen, that there's an 8-foot sewer abutment that stretches out, which leaves only 16 feet access way to my driveway. And that really kind of exacerbates, puts a kind of a exclamation point on this whole case, that the issue, the extreme difficulty of pulling in and out of our driveway, in particular, and we have a very challenged street to park on. A good neighbor, one of the neighbors that signed our letter in favor of our work that we're doing, parks right in front of her front door, which is right next door. You can't see it in the picture. When that occurs, I've got about 8 feet to get between the abutment and the car that's there to slither into my drive space to get in and get out. Again, I actually endorse Ms. McDuffie's parking there because she has a bad knee and she is handicapped. So what I'd like to do is make it sort of a turnaround. I've stopped doing that until I know what I can do, with the permission to be able to come in, either park or use that space to turn around appropriately. So that's kind of like the front yard scenario. In the backyard, I have very little useful property there. And so what I'm appealing to the board is to one, consider that perhaps some of the calculations here might be challenged or in suspect because of really trying to work with the topography of the property to make the actual additional patio go with the contour of the land. And we did that to a great degree, and I know the team worked hard to kind of come up with some numbers. But again, the other piece of it is the calculation of the deck that's existing. There's much of it that's less than 4 foot above grade. So I think there's some ambiguousness in the ways in which that's calculated, that you can exclude portions of it that are above, and most of the deck is not above 4 foot grade at its highest point. So I think that there's things that we could consider in terms of the variance in the percentage of the lot usage. But most importantly, what I request is the favorable consideration of the maintenance of the structures that I'm attempting to build. And I attempt, again, I think that's the second part of this, but certainly would like to weave that conversation in here, because they kind of do come together, that I've attempted to make some improvements for our benefit, but also because of the extreme limitations on the property. Last point being, it's in Zone 6, I think 6,000 is the smallest, and we're just barely a thread above that. So we're at a very small footprint, very odd shape, very strange topography. That concludes my comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Why don't you have a seat? We have some speakers in this case.
These letters from the neighbors, can we turn these in here?
Yes, give them to Mr. Russell. First speaker is Cleveland C. James. Resides at 2801 21st Road South, Arlington, Virginia, 22204.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and board members. My name is Cleveland James Jr. I live at 2801 21st Road in South Arlington. And I'm coming to the board this evening, because I'm concerned of the environmental impact of what has taken place at the top of my hill where this gentleman lives. I live right below him. I have taken some pictures I'd like to present to the board for your viewing to see how the hill itself has deteriorated. And recently we've been experiencing some water runoffs that has impacted my yard as well as my neighbors, and they're coming behind me to speak more with you about it. But I've lived at that property almost 50 years. I'm a longtime resident, and I've watched the hill itself, and it always has been a balance of maintaining the support of our property. And can I present these to you now? Or?
And just be aware that we'll have to keep them. If it's, okay. So if you give them to Mr. Russell, he'll start first, and then we'll pass them down.
Those two pictures there are over 10 years old, and now what you're looking at are the two current pictures of how the hill itself is current condition. My concern again is the water runoff that's coming from the hill. We have experienced large volumes of water from some of the recent storms that we previously that's taken place. And again, the biggest concern that we do have right now, the environmental impact. I'm not sure whether there's an environmental study that was made in the beginning of this construction, or whether or not the county paid attention to what was happening below the current address of what's happening of the construction. But I believe that with this structure, the impact will have a problem on us. Now, my last two pictures I'd like to present to you is that I'm not sure if it's the county responsibility or the homeowner association, but years ago they constructed a drainage trench that runs through the middle of the hill. And over the years, it has not been tended to, it's dilapidated. I went up and took pictures of it to show you exactly the current condition of this drainage ditch. And again, thank you for your consideration and your time. I'm hoping that this can be resolved from not having an environmental impact on my property with my wife and I.
And is this your house, Mr. Mr. James? Sure. So you're the one
The truck in the driveway.
with the.
You see the picture up there?
So you're the one right in the middle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the truck, that's my house right there.
The one with the truck or the one in the middle?
The one with the truck.
Okay. Okay, great.
That drainage ditch starts pretty much at the end of where that tree is in the middle, and it runs all the way around the property line.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking your time to come as well. Thomas Bellamy, 2805 South 21st Road.
That's the ditch, the drainage.
Good evening. I'm Tom Bellamy Jr. I'm speaking on behalf of my parents, Tom Bellamy and Betty Bellamy. We live at 2805 South 21st Road, the house right in the middle. First of all, I'd like to mention that Mr. Serrano indicated that he has experienced physical hardship. Well, our property has experienced physical hardship because of the slope, because of what Mr. Serrano has done with this hill. He has taken the initiative to do his own thing without building permits, and over a course of 1 to 2 years, it has eroded the hill. Because of that, my parents have had to waterproof the house. They've experienced foundational problems. I do have the original. I only have the original. I would like to mail this if I can. The original, they had to waterproof the house.
Actually, we wouldn't need that if you just tell us how much they paid.
$12,500.
And they waterproofed their whole
Right.
house.
It's worse than it was. We've been at this property for 45 years, and we've never experienced anything like this. We still have problems. Our house and the house to the right, we still have problems.
So is your house the one in the middle in this picture?
Our house is the one in the middle. Correct. In addition to that, we had to build a retaining wall. and we spent over $10,000 for the retaining wall. The retaining wall, we're talking about a concrete retaining wall. It has started to corrode because of this. So Mr. Serrano has not spoke to any of the neighbors, knowing that this house sits on a hill. He hasn't, I mean, and that this has impacted us and it has cost us dearly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bellamy. We appreciate your being here. Mr. Randall, 2809 21st Road South. And are you the house on the far right then?
I am the house on the far right, and good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Randolph Randall, and I'd like to point out a couple things. If you notice the number of trees that are resting on the ground there, they were removed by the applicant without permits, without permission from the arborists. Talk about community outreach. There was none on 21st Road. Outreach to the Civic Association, Knox Civic Association, where I'm a past president, zero. The applicant came in and began to construct stormwater runoff. If you go back to the earlier picture where the fire hydrant and the catch basin is located, that's in front of his house. The water he discharges from his gutters go down to the right, down the slope. There's no curbing, no catch spaces, zero. On that side. On the back side, same. In the rear, where the downspout comes down and goes into the ground, I don't know where that discharges into. But the issue is on the property itself and the runoff from the street that comes down the slope there. I would ask that you deny this request, because not only have we lost our wildlife habitat with that wooded area, we have lost vegetation. We're not going to get those trees back, ladies and gentlemen. And I would ask that what's in the staff report in terms of the violations be recognized. The owners come in and has ignored the county's request to come in and get information to do it properly. Thank you.
Before you go, I have a question for you, as one of the neighbors that's lived there a long time.
Well, I've lived there. We're the original.
Right. And so let me just ask you, the original owner, or an owner at least 2 owners ago, we understand from the application, did come to the county and request a variance to build the original deck.
Yes.
From that original deck, because there's a recommendation that we would grant that portion of the variance to allow him to keep it. But that original deck was also built out of conformance with the variance that was obtained and requested from the original builder.
Correct.
Did that one cause trouble? Just that deck, not the additional?
No, that never was an issue.
Okay.
And the original owner, then the Briggs, Henry Briggs, that was the owner before this one, everything was fine.
Okay.
Totally different.
But I just want to make sure.
The surfaces now have contributed.
Right.
There.
I just want to know, because the first deck being there, I wanted to know if there were trouble, since it was there from '89 until now. So thank you.
Our family has been in that property when it was a dirt road.
Wow. Thank you very much for coming in. I don't believe I have any other speakers. So, Mr. Isaac? Yes, you may.
There's some interesting comments. Couple of things. You know, Mr. Sorrento has not regraded, you know, he has not changed the grade of the yard from what it was. Well, he did try to put some retaining walls in there. When this gentleman talks about the water from the street, if you look at the grading plan Arlington gave me, there is a natural swale that's been in existence since the property began. And believe me, I've chewed Mr. Sorrento out a few times. I would like I'd like to propose the possibility of me bringing a soils engineer out to look at the back of this property. Mr. Sorrento, he wants to be a good neighbor, and he doesn't want his property moving. And in some exuberance, I think he's tried himself. I would like to propose if I could bring a soils engineer out there to walk the back of this property and give a professional evaluation of anything that would be erosion and what might be a proper solution. I was talking to Mr. Sorrento earlier tonight, and we tried walking around this deck, and it's so steep we really can't even walk. We did it once by holding on to the edges, but he's saying it'd be nice if he could put like a little terrace in there with a retaining wall. I don't want to do anything without proper procedures. But I say I did want to recommend my bringing in a soils engineer to walk this property with me and make a professional recommendation report on this. Like your...
Nothing from you. I think I have a question for Mr. Sorrento, which is, I think Mr. Isaacs on your behalf said that he kind of scolded you for building without permits, but I'd like you to directly address the fact that you initiated substantial amount of construction without obtaining any proper permits and have created a lot of coverage of this lot by virtue of what you did.
Yes, ma'am. First off, the construction, while we consider it major, I mean, putting in a stone patio on the grade level, stepping down, I didn't see that as major. I thought that was, within my right. So again, I recognize where we are. The point, again, is the property is so limited on its usefulness. I do want to address one other key point, that there was one tree that I removed because of it was knocked down by Hurricane Sandy and landed on my deck. I had to repair the deck. The tree was damaged. I had to cut the tree down. All those other branches you see there are not from my doing. They're not from trees that I cut down. In fact, one of my big concerns, and again, I appreciate the concerns of the neighbors. I wish they would have come and talked to me because I think we could have worked together. The thing here is that the area there, that 75-foot difference between my property and the next property line down the hill, was in great challenge from a from an environmental standpoint when I moved in. There's vines that are growing on all the live trees. I cut some of them off of the trees that were on my property. There's large oak trees that are felled that are in that area that have been there for years. I understand the concerns that are raised, but I want to express clearly that this was not of my fault. I understand the work that I've done may have had some impact, and I would want to rectify anything that I may have done, but I truly believe that the work I have done has actually limited the amount of water runoff and not increased it or provided any addition to it. I believe that the issues have been there for years, and they're getting worse because the trees are dying and they're falling down, and it's very unfortunate that that's occurring, but please understand that my position is it's not of my doing. I don't know if I answered your specific request, because I think the other part of your question about the coverage, again, the front of the property, extremely limited, and I have no choice but to pull into my front my front yard, which was grass, and turn around. So I'm kind of between a rock and a hard space here as far as what do I do. I did buy the property. We enjoyed it. We liked it. We wanted it for our potential of the view and what we could do with the backyard. I respect that I need to correct any building permit issues, regrade, whatever is needed. I'm ready, willing, and able. But I do ask that the board consider that my actions aren't explicitly of fault of any damage or wrongdoing to this area, because I'm of great concern of that as well. In fact, I enjoy the nature, and in fact, I enjoy the fact there are trees there. That's a benefit to the backyard, isn't it? So I'm actually on the side of the neighborhood here. I want to do the right thing. I don't want to be on the wrong side of this. I want to be for the good of the neighborhood and for the good of the neighbors.
Thank you. Mr. Noxon, who owns the property behind Mr. Sorrento and between the neighbors we heard from?
The Homeowners Association. I think I have it listed in here. There's a particular name to it. Let's see. Perry Knowles Homeowners Association. And actually that land to, if you're looking at the map down kind of on the south side of Mr. Sorrento's property, that whole area there that looks like it could be part of his lot is actually part of the HOA's property too. It kind of engulfs his property.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to comment. Some of that steepness and rawness is not on Mr. Sorrento's property.
No, that's why I wanted it on the record, Mr. Isaac, because I think it's clear that we all understand that.
Okay.
But that's why I wanted it on the record to say who owned that property.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I do hear the neighbors, and again, as those of you who've been here the whole evening know, Mr. Russell pointed out earlier, one of the things that we do not have jurisdiction over in the zoning board is the question of the sewer and the runoff and the rainfall. That's not the issues that we address. You know, we only can address the zoning issues and the variance at question here. And I guess at this point, we need to decide what to do with these two cases. I did hear Mr. Isaac make a request to defer this matter and allow him time to work with staff.
Yes, ma'am.
And so,
Madam Chairman, I mean, you know, the board is usually quite open to allowing people to defer for a while, to allow for a redesign. It seems to me that there could possibly be the need for an extensive redesign of what's on the ground other than the house itself, in terms of potential retaining walls, reduction of existing decks, reduction of this or that or the other, that may come back to us for a request for a little bit of this or a little bit of that to accomplish a plan that is suitable to the applicant, to the staff, and hopefully to the neighbors as well. I'm not inclined to approve a lot of what I see here tonight, and a denial wouldn't allow for
a resolution.
A resolution that, I mean, that would just end all the variances that, or the variance and the use permit allowances that we could consider, I believe, for a considerable period of time. So, you know, maybe there isn't anything that can be worked out satisfactory with say a 3-month delay, but on the other hand, maybe a plan, suitable plan can be reached.
And I think that also gives Mr. Sorrento time to work with the Civic Association as well, the Homeowners Association. I mean, I think there are a lot of other parties that need to be brought into at least commenting on what the proposals are, so a deferral would be wise. Mr. Isaacs, what time period were you considering?
I was going to ask for 60 days because 30 days gets real tight when you're between the two. I'm especially concerned about this front driveway entrance.
And I think given the fact that you need time to talk to the neighbors, I'm inclined to suggest that we would recommend 3-month deferral.
Okay, 90 days would be very soon.
Heard Mr. Russell already talking about, and
so I'd be glad to go back and meet with Mr. Noxon again and see where we have some leeway to work these ideas. He wants to be good neighbors.
And I would ask you to take to heart, and I know, Mr. Isaac, you do a good job with this with your clients, the comments of the board and the fact that we are not happy with what exists in terms of the current properties coverage and the usages that are here.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
many impervious surfaces and other issues. So
Yes,
I know that this is going to cause a lot of creativity on your part, but I also know that you're hopefully up to the task.
Madam Chair? I have a couple of points I want to make with respect to that. Yeah, I think obviously a deferral is necessary because you've got a lot of work to do. But I wanted to know from staff, what would be the impact on the, I think there have been some complaints on citations. What would be the impact on that, and what is the status of that?
We don't have a zoning case open now, I don't believe. I know they're going to initiate one, but for code enforcement, it might be an issue. I'd have to talk to
code enforcement,
yeah.
Or at least
It was for all the construction without permits, and he would have to bring those items into compliance. By getting permits, The only structures he can bring into compliance with the building code right now would be the retaining walls, because that's the only thing we would grant him a permit for. That's the only thing that meets the zoning ordinance at the time as well.
I can't speak, may I address the...
Well, and the other point that I wanted to make to you, Mr. Sorrento, was you have to reach out to the neighbors. They don't have to reach out to you. You have to reach out to them. The notices go up that say there's a meeting and that this property owner is seeking to have make changes to his property that are outside the bounds of the law, and therefore we're going to have a hearing on that. That's what this is. But you have, and the website says it. They discuss things you should do, and one of the things you should do is go door to door with the adjacent property owners.
Can I address that, sir?
Explain to them and provide them plans and explain to them what you want to do and seek to have their agreement. If you look at some of the packets there, you'll see there are a number of people who have done, applicants like yourself, went to great extent to make sure their neighbors knew exactly what they were doing and sought to get their support. And not in every case did they get their support. You did the opposite. You said they could have come to you, I think was a quote.
I didn't say that. Sir,
That wasn't what you said in the record, Mr. Sorrento.
I said that in a different perspective because I did exactly what you mentioned, that I should go door to door to the adjacent neighbors. Again, probably my oversight, but the adjacent neighbors on the plot were the two that you have letters from. Those are the two.
Downhill people are adjacant also.
The adjacent neighbor is the HOA. I sent them actually spoke to them and sent them a message. Got no response, but again, they did tell me verbally they had no issues with what I was doing. So I spoke to the adjacent neighbors. Again, I'm not.
Mr. Sorrento, I think thank you for your comment. That we have told you what we believe the adjacent neighbors include. I think Mr. Isaac can work with you there. We've been very explicit when you come back that we would expect that you have contacted the Civic Association and the neighbors in the neighborhood who are being affected by the things on your property. So that would include the downslope neighbors as well.
And my comments were not to sidestep, just to explain my actions.
Your perception. And thank you. I think at this point, we are prepared to make a motion. I think we've heard especially in light of the fact that we're leaning towards granting a deferral. You can hold any other comments you have till the next time we hear your case. It might be
one
wise.
relevant comment, just for your essay, just quickly, that there were two violations. I do have a permit that addresses the first one in the front, which is the front porch. The second one is regarding the back.
The retaining wall? Yeah. Those two you can cure, and if there's other ones that come, you can say that you're scheduled for the hearing, and it may or may not affect the issuance of additional citations. So thank you. The chair is prepared for a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer variance case V1089814 VA2 to the June meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. And one more motion, Mr. Russell?
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer use permit case V1089814 UP1 to the June meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motions both carry 4-0. This matter is deferred until June. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your time. Mr. Russell, before you arrived, we had a conversation about our typical plan, our typical organizational structure, and we debated that we thought we do the organizational meeting in March, but with Ms. Craven not here tonight, we have determined we will defer that till the April board meeting. Okay. And then our final item of the night would be our minutes from the last board meeting.
Move approval of the minutes of the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting of February 19th, 2014.
It's been moved and seconded. Thank you, Mr. Russell and Ms. Freshman. All in favor? Aye. Those minutes carry, and then Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved by Ms. Freshman.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned.